Then Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO 31. Ryu's plan was reasonable and appropriate. Furthermore, there wasn't anyone else skilled in commanding here. His arrangement also perfectly suited the inclinations of the young ladies. There was no need to mention Ice, the monster-slaying fanatic. Lefia was eager to showcase her magic in front of Ice, and Philvis, ever since experiencing the total annihilation of her previous teams, had developed an obsessive determination to protect her teammates. Guarding her dear friend closely would allow her to perform at 120% of her capability. Proud warriors, archers of the forest. Lefia began chanting the incantation for a large-scale spell. A substantial amount of magic power gathered around her, illuminating her like a spotlight. A complex circular magic array appeared out of thin air beneath her feet. Sensing the fluctuation of magic chanting, some of the man-eating plants immediately abandoned their assault on the group of adventurers and turned toward Lefia's location. Seeing over a dozen man-eating plants rushing towards her, Lefia grew nervous, nearly interrupting her incantation. Purify the enemies, thunder of exorcism, supreme god, Bacchus staff. In an instant, a dazzling white lightning bolt shot out like a laser, piercing through the bodies of 2 or 3 man-eating plants before hitting the wall, leaving a deep, fist-sized hole. 2 magic stones emitting a dark green glow fell to the ground. Lefia looked over in surprise and saw Philvis holding a short staff in one hand and a dagger in the other, standing protectively in front of her. Philvis then turned around and nodded at her, her eyes conveying a clear message. I will protect you. With her confidence restored, Lefia continued chanting the incantation. The group of adventurers also stepped in front of the man-eating plants, preventing them from approaching the chanting Lefia. On the other side, Ice straightforwardly activated her wind magic, sweeping the giant man-eating plant like a tornado. In just one strike, the giant man-eating plant was pierced through by Ice, leaving a chilling hole. Olivaz's mouth dropped open in disbelief. He could not fathom that a giant man-eating plant, equivalent to a level 5 adventurer, could be slain in an instant. Damn it, I am the favored one of that lord. How could I be defeated here? Giant man-eating plants, he shouted like a gambler who had lost everything. With his shout, 3 more giant man-eating plants emerged from the ground. With reinforcements at his back, Olivaz's arrogance returned. See that? This is the power of that lord. I told you, all you pathetic adventurers will die here today. You should worry about yourself first, came a mocking voice. Who? Olivaz turned his gaze, only to see a figure right in front of him. It was Ryu himself. Taking advantage of the monsters being drawn away, Ryu used the ring ability to lower his presence and approach Olivaz, then threw a punch. I am the man favored by that lord. Olivaz shouted, raising his arm to block the punch. A loud bang echoed. The arrogance on Olivaz's face instantly turned to horror. He felt a tremendous force collide with his arm, followed by a crisp crack as his arm bone broke. But that wasn't the end. The spot where his arm was hit immediately frosted over, and a bone-chilling cold spread through his entire body. As if triggered by something, the pair of rainbow-glowing gauntlets on Ryu's hands suddenly emitted a deep blue magical light. With a whoosh, a storm infused with frost magic erupted from Ryu, expanding outward. From above, it looked like a ring made of frost. Huh? The effect triggered on the first hit. You must have terrible luck. Did you step in dog shit on your way out? Ryu exclaimed, recalling the effects of elemental fury and taunting Olivaz. Curse you, my power is granted by that lord. How could I lose to you? Olivaz broke free from the frost's grip, his body shivering and his breath visible with ice shards, yet still he couldn't help but spew boastful words. Ryu understood clearly. Dealing with such a fanatical, mentally deranged zealot, attacking him personally was utterly meaningless. You mean Enyo? Just a minor deity of Ares who destroyed a few small villages, and she thinks she's some kind of primordial god. Ryu wore a deliberately jeering expression on his face. There was no better way to break a zealot than to directly mock his faith. Ryu's words had an immediate effect. I'll kill you. Olivaz's face twisted and contorted, showing an expression of madness as if his brain had started trembling. Like a rabid dog, he charged at Ryu with no regard for anything. Seeing Olivaz almost lose his mind, Ryu smirked and stepped forward to meet him. Indeed, Olivaz, having lost his rationality, was terrifying. He completely abandoned defense, throwing every punch with lethal intent, as if he wanted to take Ryu down with him. But unfortunately for him, he met Ryu. Ryu relished this kind of head-on, do-or-die fighting style. With his formidable defense and self-recovery abilities, he could practically do as he pleased. To everyone present, it looked like a philosophical-looking man and a boy wearing rainbow-colored gloves was brawling like wild beasts. You punched me in the face, I hit you on the nose, you kicked me in the abdomen, I knee you in the waist. But as the fight went on, Olivaz started feeling something was off. His attacks landed on Ryu without causing pain or leaving marks as if hitting a steel plate. On the contrary, every punch from Ryu inflicted severe damage not only to Olivaz's muscles but also to his internal organs. The Rainbow Glove's elemental attacks alone were enough to give him a headache. And with bad luck, they would trigger even stronger magical effects. Fire burns, electric shocks, freezing, and petrification, all these Olivaz experienced in quick succession. In just a few minutes, his body was covered in various burns, scorch marks, frostbite, and numerous other wounds of all sizes. Even though he had fused with a magic stone, turning his body into a half-human, half-monster, and possessed monstrous vitality, he gradually couldn't withstand Ryu's onslaught. Impossible, I am the man blessed by that lord. How could I lose to you? Olivaz shouted, trying to brainwash himself despite his unwavering faith wavering. You better shout louder, see if your goddess will come to save you. Ryu, now having the upper hand, began to mock him. Don't get arrogant, you're just a puny human. A puny human. Olivaz screamed, throwing another punch. Ryu's eyes flashed. This time, he didn't take it head on. Instead, he ducked, dodging the punch, and seized the opportunity to get close, delivering a fierce uppercut to Olivaz's chin. Bang. By sheer luck, this punch triggered the explosive flame magic effect. A brilliant burst of fire exploded under Olivaz's jaw. With the combined force of Ryu's punch and the explosive flame, Olivaz was sent flying. He hit the ground with a heavy thud and passed out. By now, the man-eating plants in the cave had been mostly cleared out. Even the giant man-eating plants Olivaz relied on had been taken down by ice. With the crisis averted, the rescued adventurers gathered around. Thank you all for your rescue. I am Osfi, the captain of Hermes Familia, said the blue-haired, bespectacled woman, supported by her teammates, as she approached Ryu and the others. Ryu and his companions exchanged glances, and finally, he stepped forward. You're welcome. It's only right for adventurers to help each other in the dungeon. I am Budao, and these two are Ice and Lefia from Loki's Familia. That one over there is Philvis from Dionysus' Familia. Loki's Familia? Isn't that the Sword Princess? The fame of Ice, known as the Sword Princess of the Loki Familia, was widespread. Not just in Orario, but across the entire world, few hadn't heard of Ice Wallenstein. In terms of Earth, she would be a world-class superstar. Osfi, the captain, scrutinized Ryu. She had noticed that this 4-person team was entirely under his command. Saved, we're saved. Thank goodness the Sword Princess and your team arrived. Otherwise, we would have all died here, exclaimed the beast woman girl named Lulun, greeting them warmly. Ryu's eyes flashed as he casually asked, are you also here to investigate the monster migration on the 24th floor? That's right. If it weren't for the guild's black-robed magician holding something over us, who would want to come here? Lulun immediately started complaining. Lulun. Osfi scolded sharply. Eek. Lulun instantly straightened up, even her tail standing on end. It's because of your big mouth that we've been caught in this mess. Haven't you learned your lesson yet? Osfi reprimanded her sternly. But Ryu had already gotten the information he wanted. He glanced at the three women, who seemed to be deep in thought, and chuckled to himself. At least two gods would now be more wary of Uranos, the guild's bigwig. In the original story, it was subtly hinted that Uranos was the mastermind behind several major events. Ryu always felt that Uranos was no ordinary figure and was scheming something behind the scenes. Since his plans couldn't be brought to light, they were likely to harm everyone's interests and could even cause chaos in Orario. With the promising growth of Gudako Hotel, Ryu sought stability. Any entity that disrupted the peace of Orario was his enemy. Although his current strength was limited, once he became powerful, he would eliminate anyone trying to destabilize Orario, whether it was the dark factions plotting from within or Ares, who had established a military kingdom outside and was eyeing Orario. He had no intention of being on constant guard against threats. Tilda. At that moment, there was a slight movement nearby. Olivas, who had been knocked out, was starting to stir. It looks like this lunatic is waking up, Ryu said, walking over and grabbing Olivas by the head with one hand, lifting him and throwing him in front of Philvis. He's all yours. Impossible, I am blessed by that lord, how could I lose to the likes of you? Even on the brink of death, Olivas continued ranting, proving just how terrifying a religious fanatic could be. Olivas. The hatred in Philvis's eyes nearly turned to flames. She drew the dagger from her waist and slashed it across Olivas's neck. Blood spurted out, staining her pale, clean face. To everyone's shock except Ryu, the wound on Olivas's neck began to heal. Ha ha ha, I am blessed by that lord, you mere mortals cannot harm me. Olivas laughed maniacally. He has fused with a magic stone, you just need to dig out the stone from his chest to kill him, Ryu helpfully advised from the side. You. Olivas's laughter abruptly stopped. Filled with hatred, Philvis wasted no time. She plunged her dagger into Olivas's chest, ignoring his screams, and began to twist it inside. A monster's magic stone is akin to a human heart. Once sufficiently damaged, the monster immediately turns to ashes. With a soft crack, Olivas suddenly stiffened and then shattered like a statue, finally turning to ash just like a monster. Philvis's hand was covered in blood, and in her palm was a dark green magic stone. Ding. The magic stone slipped from her hand with a soft sound. Though her great vengeance was achieved, Philvis seemed to lose her life's purpose all at once. She stood up with a blank look in her eyes and staggered out like a zombie. Everyone stared at each other in silence. Lefia stepped forward with a worried expression. I'll go check on Miss Philvis. Ryu sighed. Philvis's situation was fundamentally a psychological issue. Olivas had killed her companions, leaving her as the sole survivor multiple times. Now that she had avenged them, her emotions were in turmoil. Unless she was a cold, unfeeling machine, she would inevitably develop some psychological problems. What she needed now was someone to rely on to warm her heart and time to slowly heal. It would be even better if she could fall in love. As for her lover being the same gender, love is what matters. Yuri is the true path, while heterosexuality is, well, if someone has to face hell, let it be me. Ryu watched Lefia's retreating figure and thought darkly to himself. After defeating the boss, it was time to clean up the battlefield. Seeing the scattered dark green magic stones, Ryu's eyes flashed with an idea, and he quickly spoke up, everyone, I have a use for these mutated magic stones. Would you be willing to part with them? Ice immediately handed over the magic stones dropped by the four giant man-eating flowers to him. Seeing how cooperative she was, Ryu quickly patted her head in appreciation and whispered in her ear, when we get back, I'll make you some cream desserts as a reward. Ice's eyes lit up instantly, and she nodded like a squirrel. Seeing this, Lulun also casually tossed her magic stone over. Well, Tilda, these magic stones look so gross. I don't even know if they can be exchanged for money. If you want them, they're yours. Lulun was so carefree that she completely missed her captain's frantic signaling. Ryu couldn't help but find it amusing. He had seen many instances of sons and fathers causing trouble for each other, but this was the first time he had seen someone trouble their captain. This girl must have faced quite a bit of backlash from her captain. With his teammates leading the way and owing Ryu a life debt, Osfi could only remain silent, even if she suspected Ryu had his agenda. With their captain's tacit approval, the members of the Hermes Familia handed over their collected magic stones to him. In no time, Ryu had gathered dozens of these mutated magic stones. I don't want to take advantage of you. Here are the magic stones we found along the way. They're all yours, Ryu said, seemingly performing a magic trick as he produced a large bag filled to the brim with magic stones. Aside from Osfi, who remained silent, the members of Hermes Familia couldn't hide their delight. This bag of magic stones was worth far more than what they had given away, making it seem like they had gained a lot more from the exchange. We have other matters to attend to, so we'll be going now. Goodbye. With the matter settled, Ryu didn't linger. He said goodbye to the members of Hermes Familia and returned to the surface with Ice. After escorting Ice back to the Loki Familia, Ryu also returned to his dormitory. Everything seemed calm, but Ryu knew this was just the last bit of peace before the storm hit. The Loki Familia was about to embark on an expedition, and who knew how much turmoil it would stir up this time. Even though Ryu had prepared thoroughly, he couldn't help but feel a bit anxious. On the other side, Ice, who had returned to the Familia, arrived at the leader's office. She was just about to begin reporting the findings of her investigation to the three heads of the Familia and the goddess Loki. Ice-tan, that guy didn't do anything to you, right? Did he take advantage of you while you were asleep, doing this and that? Loki bombarded her with questions before Ice could even start. Ice immediately put on a silent expression. Loki. Reveria shouted to stop her. Isn't Mom worried at all? Your daughter spent the whole night outside with a strange man. Loki didn't stop and instead tried to rally support. Who's your mom? Reveria snapped angrily. It seemed like women of any race were most sensitive about their age. All right, Loki, Finn, the captain, had to step in to smooth things over and bring the conversation back on track. Ice, wasn't Lefia with you? Why didn't you come back together? Lefia is with Philvis. That elf girl from the Dionysus Familia. Finn smiled slightly. It's good for Lefia to get to know more of her kin. Now, please give us a detailed report of your investigation, Finn said seriously. Ice nodded and began her report slowly. An hour later, Finn let Ice go to rest after she finished her report. After Ice left, the leaders of the Loki Familia's expressions turned grim. Fusing magic stones with humans, even reviving those who had once died, this is really... Finn smiled bitterly. That child Ice has also caught the eye of some troublesome characters, Gareth remarked. What worries me more is the ambiguous attitude of the guild. It seems they are plotting something behind the scenes, Reveria said, equally serious. Loki, you went to the guild to probe Uranus. How did it go? Finn asked. That old fox is as cunning as ever. He neither admitted nor showed any flaws, Loki said with her signature squint, devoid of any humor. Let's put the guild on our watch list for now. Our top priority is still the expedition, Finn finally decided as the captain. Finally, the time has come. Gareth straightened up at the mention of the expedition. Yes, Gareth, how are the logistics preparations going? Finn asked. Rest assured, everything is ready. Gareth patted his chest confidently. Reveria, how's the contact with the Hephaestus Familia? Finn then turned to Reveria. Tsubaki will lead the team personally, and the magic weapons have already been crafted in advance. Good, this time, we must explore the unknown territories that even the Zeus and Hera Familias couldn't reach and make our names known throughout the world. Finn declared passionately. Haha, that's what I like about you. Such a small body but with boundless ambition. Gareth laughed heartily. Thinking back, the three of us have come a long way together, Reveria said nostalgically, noting that only the three of them remained from the original members of the Loki Familia. Indeed, and we will keep moving forward. Soon, Ryu received a notification from the Loki Familia to assemble in 3 days for the grand expedition. Upon receiving the news, his eyes sharpened. The 59th floor, the source of the corruption, the demi-spirit, here I come. Ryu immediately began to prepare. He didn't have much to prepare since items like tents and other materials were provided by the Loki Familia. Weapons and medicines could be directly exchanged from the system. The only things he needed to prepare himself were the seasonings and cooking utensils required for making food. Since this was an expedition, complex cooking was out of the question. Ryu planned to focus on grilling, so he needed to prepare plenty of spices. But even this was simple, just store them in the storage space. As for ingredients, apart from some supplementary items, the rest could be gathered along the way in the dungeon. Ryu's main concern was arranging matters at the Gudako Hotel. Such a large-scale expedition wouldn't be over in just 3 to 5 days, so everything needed to be properly arranged. By the time Ryu finished his preparations, almost 3 days had passed. On the day of the expedition, nearly all the members of the Gudako Hotel came out to see him off before he departed. After all, an expedition into the dungeon wasn't a picnic. Although the female clerks had absolute confidence in him, nothing in life was certain, and they feared the worst. Even Mamma Mia, who usually didn't show him a good face, patted him on the shoulder and said, "Gudao, come back quickly once the expedition is over. I can't manage the Gudako Hotel by myself. Gudao-kun, I, the goddess, command you to return. I'm still waiting for you to make me delicious food." Hestia said with her arms crossed in a haughty expression. However, she didn't realize that this pose made her chest stand out even more. The old staff at the tavern were also tearful, looking as if Ryu was heading to the gallows. Feeling awkward, Ryu quickly waved goodbye to everyone and headed towards the Tower of Babel. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. FGO, 32. Ryu didn't notice the complex gaze hidden behind the shop door, staring intently at his back until he disappeared. The owner of that gaze was Seer. "If you're so concerned about him, why don't you go see him off? This might be your last chance." A cool voice sounded behind her. It was Ryu, who had been standing there for a while. Before she could finish speaking, Seer quickly turned around, covered Lu's mouth, and anxiously said, "Don't curse him. He will come back safely." Although Seer was just an ordinary girl, and Ryu was a level 4 adventurer, Ryu neither stopped Seer's actions nor dodged. After a while, Seer realized what she had done, quickly let go, and apologized with an embarrassed look. "I'm sorry, Ryu, I was really rude." "Don't worry about it, but you seem to like him, right? Are you just going to keep hiding from him?" Ryu's question struck right at the core. Seer gave a bitter smile. "I can't be like my mother, willing to do anything for what she wants. Between him and me, it can only be left to fate." Seer's pale gray pupils looked into the distance, where the towering Tower of Babel stood. Soon, Ryu arrived in front of the Tower of Babel and joined the Loki Familia and Hephaestus Familia members. Of course, some members of the Loki Familia didn't look at him kindly. After all, Ryu was like someone stealing from under their noses, and the target was their acknowledged princess, the Sword Princess Ice Wallenstein. Ryu, however, remained calm under their gazes. With the system in him, his sights were already set on higher levels. Even the so-called strongest in Orario, the only level 7, Otter, would be surpassed by him sooner or later. Such side characters' gazes didn't bother him at all. Fortunately, most of the main members of the Loki Familia, except for the Wolfman Bet, had a decent attitude toward him. As for Lefia, whom Ryu considered a strong rival, her close friend even came to see her off personally. Lefia held Philvis's hand, smiling and talking, while Philvis, usually cold as ice, blushed with the demeanor of a shy girl. The scene between the two elven beauties was filled with the fragrance of lilies, making those around them look at them strangely. "You made it," the leader Finn greeted proactively. Both Ryu's strength and the power behind him warranted such a gesture. "Captain Finn," Ryu nodded in acknowledgement. "Mr. Gudao, let me introduce someone to you." Finn pointed to a voluptuous, slightly tanned one-eyed woman beside him. "This is Tsubaki, captain of the Hephaestus Familia." "Lady Tsubaki, hello." Ryu quickly extended his hand. As one of the 2 renowned blacksmithing familias in Orario, their influence and power were no less than the top-tier familias of Loki and Freya. "Hey, youngster, nice to meet you," Tsubaki said heartily, patting Ryu's shoulder like a man. "Mr. Gudao, I have a proposal for you. Would you be willing to join the Vanguard team and head to the 59th floor?" Finn suddenly made a surprising request. It was known that Ryu joined the expedition as a non-combatant member, similar to a Hephaestus Familia blacksmith. Despite being called the Vanguard, the team was Loki Familia's absolute main force, with none of its members below level 5, except for Lefia, who was being specially trained as a mage. Finn's words acknowledged Ryu's strength, but they also caused quite a stir among the other Loki Familia members. Why would the captain invite him to join the Vanguard team? Yeah, doesn't this guy look pretty weak? Fortunately, Finn's authority as the captain was unquestionable, though the members talked among themselves, none voiced any objections. Alright, Ryu thought for a moment before agreeing. After all, his target was also the corrupted spirit fragment entrenched on the 59th floor. The system had already warned him that it had been mutated, making it stronger than before. To avoid any unforeseen accidents, he needed to go along just in case. Equipped with rare gear and mystic code, his strength had already surpassed that of an average level 5. With many contingency plans prepared, Ryu was brimming with confidence, treating this as an opportunity to experience a real-life team raid on a boss. That's great, Finn said with a hearty laugh. Although Reveria had some objections, Ryu's continuous goodwill gestures over time were not lost on Finn, who, being no fool, personally persuaded Reveria. With everything ready, the grand expedition team finally set off. At that moment, Ryu suddenly felt a scorching gaze cast down from the tower. Such a distinctive mark made it immediately clear to him that the gaze belonged to the goddess Freya. Regardless of her intentions, Freya had favored him several times, so he couldn't afford to be impolite. Thus, Ryu smiled and waved in the direction of that gaze, considering it a greeting. Then, he followed the team into the dungeon. He could never have anticipated that this simple act of greeting would have such an effect. Freya, who had been standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, suddenly blushed, her legs weakening as she collapsed onto the carpet. To avoid the massive crowds on the upper floors, the expedition team of over 100 people split into 2 groups. The Vanguard team of the Loki Familia, led by Finn, included almost all of their main members, while Gareth led the logistics team. Their advancing efficiency was unparalleled, akin to a destructive force sweeping through. Any monsters encountered were instantly killed, and swaths of them were obliterated in seconds. In less than 2 hours, they reached the 17th floor. Who wants to take care of the Goliath? Finn suddenly asked. I'll do it, Bet said, looking at Ryu with an eager expression. Then it's yours. Be careful, Finn nodded. Careful? Do you know who I am? It's the big lug who should be careful, not me. Finn, Bet's arrogant response to Finn's concern didn't endear him to anyone, and it angered someone. Idiot Bet, how dare you speak to the captain like that? Tion's eyes glowed red with rage, her expression ferocious. Huh? What's wrong with what I said? Bet was not one to back down easily. Just as the two were about to clash, a loud noise echoed from a distance. Looks like someone beat it, Finn said with a light chuckle. Idiot Bet, next time you talk to the captain, watch your tone, or I'll skin you alive and make a wolf pelt coat out of you. Huh? Try it if you can, old hag. The two continued bickering as they quickly followed the team. Suddenly, the passage brightened, and the floor master's domain came into view. There, a white-haired boy in black armor wielded a giant sword almost as tall as he was, jumping around and continuously attacking the Goliath. Meanwhile, an orc warrior stood with arms folded, watching from the side. Idiot, how many times do I have to tell you? Use your footwork to stay in its blind spots. Yes, master. These two were none other than Bell and Otter. They were clearly in the middle of a master-student training session. When the team appeared at the entrance, Otter had already drawn the jagged greatsword from his back, looking over with a cold expression. Yo, Otter, Finn greeted with a broad smile. Finn, Otter nodded, considering that a greeting. This must be the new genius boy your familia recently recruited, Finn said, turning his gaze to Belle, who was battling the Goliath. Hello. Belle, being a polite young boy, couldn't help but greet loudly even amid a fierce fight. However, this moment of distraction nearly put him in danger. Idiot, focus. Otter immediately frowned and scolded. Yes, master. Belle quickly refocused on his opponent. Ryu, in the team, remained silent, observing quietly. He noticed that Belle's strength had already surpassed that of a typical level 2, almost comparable to level 3. Belle's growth rate was much faster than in the original story, but considering the circumstances, it made sense. The impoverished Hestia familia couldn't compare to the top-tier familia of Orario. With ample resources and a top-tier adventurer as a mentor, if Belle's growth rate wasn't fast, he wouldn't be the protagonist of the original story. Watching Belle wield his giant sword with great vigor, Ryu couldn't help but feel a bit guilty, worrying he might have stunted Belle's development. Then we won't disturb you any longer. Goodbye. Finn, noticing that the other party didn't want to be disturbed, quickly said farewell. Otter responded coldly. Understanding Otter's personality, Finn didn't mind and promptly called his teammates to move on. Passing through the tunnel, their view suddenly opened up, as if they had entered another world. In the blink of an eye, they reached the 18th floor. Here, they rested and waited for the follow-up team to arrive. Soon, the larger follow-up team arrived. With over 100 people combined, they marched grandly towards the lower floors. To accommodate the lower-level members, the team didn't move as quickly this time. However, under the formidable strength of the vanguard team, the monsters still couldn't pose any hindrance. During this journey, Ryu occasionally stepped in to stretch his muscles. After showcasing his strength, neither the members of the Loki familia nor those from the Hephaestus familia dared to underestimate him. Along the way, Ryu collected quite a few top-quality ingredients. For example, around the 20th floor, he got his hands on bear paws from ferocious bears, various magical and edible plants from the misty forest around the 40th floor, an entire giant wild boar, various fish species living in the water, and more. It was a bountiful harvest. These ingredients, growing in the magic-rich environment of the dungeon, naturally absorbed a lot of magic. The dishes made from these ingredients, regardless of taste, would undoubtedly provide significant attribute boosts. Although the entire expedition deliberately slowed their pace to accommodate the larger group, under the formidable strength of the vanguard and the overall power of the Loki familia, they still reached the 50th floor in less than 2 days. This floor also appeared to be a safe zone, with no monster births, and a vast, barren clearing in the middle of a forest that resembled a high platform, an ideal spot for setting up camp and potentially establishing a dungeon town. Unfortunately, aside from the Loki and Freya familias, few adventurers could reach this place, leaving it mostly desolate except for the camping traces left by the Loki familia. Thanks to the remnants of previous structures, the camp was quickly established. However, the atmosphere remained tense, as everyone knew that the real challenge was yet to come. The performance of the main forces would determine the success of this expedition. The blacksmiths of the Hephaestus familia began sharpening their weapons, while the Loki familia, aside from the main forces, started sorting potions, arrows, and other supplies. As for Ryu, he naturally began his specialty, cooking. Even though they had portable magic stone stoves, some complex dishes were still impractical to prepare while camping. Despite this, he managed to put on a wild culinary feast. When it comes to camping, the first thing that comes to mind is barbecue. This time, Ryu prepared teppanyaki, but not the usual kind. He used a special stone slab. This particular stone slab was no ordinary piece of rock. Ryu found it on the 33rd floor amidst a cluster of plants emitting a unique fragrance. After possibly hundreds or thousands of years of absorbing these aromas, the stone itself had acquired the scent of the surrounding flora. He discovered that when heated by fire, the stone emitted an even richer fragrance and could be used directly as a spice. To avoid revealing his storage space, Ryu insisted that the supporters from the Loki familia, despite their complaints, carry this 1-meter-wide stone slab. Now, it was time to reap the benefits. The stone slab grill was quickly set up, and Ryu, with fluid and swift movements, began cutting the ingredients. The tough sinews of the ferocious bear's paw were separated and tossed into a makeshift pressure cooker, modified by the blacksmiths of the Hephaestus familia according to Ryu's instructions. The water used was an ice spring from the dungeon, and he added a thick broth made from boiling various animal and monster bones. 2 hours later, a pot of aromatic stewed bear paw was ready. The combined aroma was overwhelmingly rich, as if a giant bear was pressing everyone's heads into the pot with its paw. Anyone who smelled it, even the most iron-willed adventurer, couldn't help but be tempted. Unfortunately, this special dish was reserved only for the main forces about to embark on the exploration, specifically the melee fighters. Tiona, with her childlike nature, couldn't wait for everyone to gather. She immediately grabbed a ladle from Ryu, scooped some into a bowl, and took a big bite, exclaiming instantly. So springy, OWW, it bounced against my teeth. Silly Tiona, let the captain eat first, her sister Tion scolded, though the drool at the corner of her mouth betrayed her. Only her deep affection for Finn made her resist. It's okay, let's all eat together. Even I can't resist this smell, Finn said, maintaining his usual demeanor despite the eager glint in his eyes, proving he was truly a leader. At that moment, Ice had silently picked up a bowl and, with the speed of a squirrel, swiftly finished her portion. True to the saying, silent people achieve great things, Ice was the first to finish her food. Another bowl, Ice said quietly, holding out her bowl. Ice, you're so sneaky. Tiona shouted with her mouth still full. Ryu, however, patted Ice on the head. This dish is only effective for the first bowl. I have prepared many other kinds of dishes that can increase your attributes, so save some room. Ice obediently nodded at his advice. By the way, how do you feel? Ryu asked. Ice clenched her fist, closed her eyes to sense the changes, and softly said, my strength has increased by about 10%. It seems these ingredients are quite effective. Ryu smiled and nodded, serving himself a bowl as well. Huh, me too, I feel a noticeable increase in strength, Tiona reported after finishing her second serving. I can indeed feel the increase in strength. It's quite miraculous, Finn said with a slight smile. He exchanged a glance with Riveria, both seeing a hint of amusement in each other's eyes. With Ryu's magical cooking, the success of this expedition seemed even more assured. Finn couldn't help but feel genuine joy, as it was he who, under pressure and against opposition, insisted on including Ryu in the expedition. Now it seemed that decision was indeed the right one. Next, Ryu used bear paw meat, fish, shrimp, and mushrooms gathered from the dungeon to make teppanyaki. While the delicious meal made everyone feel euphoric, it also significantly boosted their attributes. Leaving aside the basic attributes like strength, agility, and endurance, some dishes sped up injury recovery and provided resistance to various elemental damages. Even the 2 elven mage women weren't exempt from Ryu's special treatment. A few specially mixed drinks and custom-made desserts had them feeling waves of ecstasy while keeping their minds incredibly clear. These were specially made for mages to enhance mana gathering speed and recovery rate, and to keep their minds sharp and calm. After consuming these, the 2 elven mage women felt both love and hate towards Ryu. The love was naturally for the unparalleled taste and powerful effects. The hate was not just for embarrassing them in front of others but also because the state induced by the food made them want to indulge forever, yet their minds remained crystal clear. It was like drinking a world-class wine only to be thrown into ice-cold water just as you wanted to savor it in a dream. This contradictory sense of masochism nearly drove them mad. Ryu naturally ignored the resentful glances from the 2 elven mage women. He then sampled each dish himself, stacking buffs upon himself. Each dish seemed to increase attributes only slightly, but with the sheer volume available, as long as one had a big appetite, skyrocketing attributes were not a dream. Moreover, given Ryu's culinary skills, the food was so delicious that one might even eat their tongue. With the doubled effects, the main members of the Loki familia almost ate themselves into a state where it could affect their combat readiness. After a round of feasting and drinking. Was it delicious? Ryu smiled, patting Ice on the head. Ice, touching her slightly bulging stomach, blushed and nodded. I'll make more for you in the future, Ryu promised with a smile. And me. Tiona, whose stomach was also slightly bulging, raised her hand and shouted. Don't worry, I'll call you too, Ryu readily agreed. It's not that he had any particular feelings for Tiona. After all, she wasn't his type at all. She had neither the body nor looks and acted like a tomboy all day long. He just wanted to build a good relationship with the Loki Familia. He had a good impression of them overall. Such a positive and sunny force was worth befriending. Yay. Tiona cheered immediately. The other main members of the Loki Familia looked at Tiona with envious eyes. Even Bet was no exception. Though his face was full of displeasure, he kept stuffing food into his mouth. The more reserved members would never dare to be as forward and familiar as Tiona. As for the other members of the Loki Familia who hadn't tasted such magical food, they were practically drooling with envy. The taste of Ryu's cooking is already recognized by the gods, comparable to divine creations. But it's not just the taste. The incredible attribute-enhancing effects make adventurers eager to chase after it at any cost. In Orario, there are quite a few potions that can temporarily enhance attributes, but they are expensive and cause strong resistance with repeated use. Almost everyone who witnesses the magic of Ryu's cooking feels that, regardless of the outcome of this expedition, the value of his dishes will rise to another level. I have tested this. After eating these dishes, the effects last about 8 to 10 hours, Ryu advised Finn after making preparations for departure. Don't worry, we're the Loki Familia. 8 hours is more than enough, Finn replied confidently. Ryu nodded, knowing he had fulfilled his duty. For this expedition to the 59th floor, Finn had assembled a team including all the main members of the Loki Familia above level 5, the specially trained mage Lefia, and outsiders Ryu and Tsubaki. Perhaps Ice had informed Finn of the effects of the ring Ryu had given her, as he did not assign any additional supporters. To achieve maximum combat effectiveness, everyone was traveling light. At the entrance to the 51st floor, the area was filled with signs of artificial excavation, resembling a massive labyrinth when viewed from the outside. Ryu's mind immediately flashed to the image of a monster closely tied to him. Reveria, cast defensive magic on us, Finn instructed the elven mage. Reveria nodded and began chanting. Unlike the inexperienced Lefia, who stumbled over her incantations, Reveria's foundation was much stronger. In no time, a faint light shield flickered over everyone. This incantation would have taken Lefia twice as long to cast. With the buffs in place, Finn was about to give the order to depart when Ryu suddenly spoke up. I have a suggestion. Please go ahead, Mr. Gudao, Finn said, showing his respect for Ryu. I suggest we use the passage blasted open by the cannon dragon to jump directly from the 52nd floor to the 58th floor. This would save us a significant amount of time, Ryu. I object. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. FGO, 3-3. Reveria, cautious by nature, immediately voiced her objection. Ryu raised an eyebrow and confidently said, the dishes we just ate include several that increase magic resistance and fire resistance. Combined with Miss Reveria's defensive magic, we should be able to withstand 3 or 4 direct attacks from the dragon cannon. Doing so is too risky. It's safer and more prudent to proceed step by step. Reveria maintained her disagreement. Facing the differing opinions, Finn showed a moment of hesitation. As the leader, he naturally wanted to play it safe, but Ryu's proposal was quite tempting. After all, the attribute-enhancing effects of the food they consumed were time-limited. Wasting too much time now might lead to unforeseen complications later. Additionally, I can cast several more layers of defensive magic. I believe this can increase our ability to withstand the cannon dragon's attacks to 5 or 6 times. Ryu added another weight to his argument, glancing at Finn with a knowing look. And with the skills of the Loki Familia, you wouldn't just stand there as targets, would you? Finn's small frame shivered slightly. The ability to withstand 5 or 6 attacks, combined with his team's ability to counteract the attacks, significantly increased their chances of success. This risk was worth taking. Reveria wanted to say more, but Finn raised his hand to stop her. With a serious expression, he declared, I have decided to accept Mr. Gudao's proposal. Everyone, prepare for a rapid descent. He then turned to Ryu, we'll need your defensive magic. Ryu nodded and immediately began tracing patterns in the air with his fingers. Colorful lights appeared and enveloped each member of the team. The team members then checked their weapons and potions for any signs of loosening. Once fully prepared, Finn waved his hand with great enthusiasm. Move out. The team immediately marched resolutely into the labyrinth. Entering the 51st floor, they encountered Rhino Men. These creatures, aside from their thick hides, great strength, and bulky bodies, had few advantages. They might pose a challenge to average adventurers, but against the elite of the Loki Familia, they were easily dispatched. Ryu found it curious, wondering if these Rhino Men were the builders of the labyrinth. It seemed their family hobby was building mazes. The 51st floor was breached quickly. Ryu, who had barely had to intervene, nodded in approval at the Loki Familia's efficient combat methods. Indeed, the Loki Familia, known for their dungeon-conquering prowess, excelled in teamwork and monster clearing, unlike the Freya Familia, which emphasized individual strength. Before entering the 52nd floor, the group took a brief rest. Although we'll be using the cannon dragon's hole for rapid descent to the 58th floor, everyone must still be cautious, Finn warned. Everyone nodded in agreement. Gareth, you'll jump into the passage first with dual shields. Reveria and I will follow. As we approach the 58th floor, Reveria will start chanting a large-scale spell. Everyone else will follow closely. Ice, you cover the rear. Finn issued a series of orders. The team moved like a well-oiled machine, entering the 52nd floor. After only a few steps, Ryu suddenly felt a wave of malice emanating from deep beneath the floor. Spread out. Finn immediately shouted a warning. The others sensed it too and instinctively moved away from their positions. Boom. Just as they left, the hard obsidian floor bulged as if a volcano had erupted beneath it, followed by a massive pillar of flame shooting into the sky. The sight was both spectacular and dangerous, filling everyone with both tension and excitement. Ryu looked down at the giant hole that had been blasted open. The bottom of the seemingly endless passage appeared to have an exit the size of a billiard ball. Ryu knew this was a visual illusion caused by the distance. The long passage had turned crimson, its edges transformed into molten lava, making the entire corridor appear as though it led straight to hell. Such was the power of the cannon dragon's breath. Gareth. Finn called out. I know. Gareth, fully armed like a small tank, sheathed his 2 giant axes onto his back, then combined 2 tower shields into one and held them in front of him. Without hesitation, he jumped down. Finn and Reveria followed suit, leaping into the passage one after another. As the others jumped in one by one, an unexpected event occurred when only Lefia, Ryu, and Ice were left at the top. Thud, thud. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed as a dozen Rhino Men suddenly charged around the corner of the labyrinth. Caught off guard, Ice and Ryu managed to miss one of them. Unfortunately, this Rhino Man headed straight for Lefia, who was preparing to jump into the passage. Lefia's lack of combat experience was glaringly obvious. Instead of counter-attacking or dodging to buy time for others to help, she stood there, frozen in fear. Bang. The Rhinoman didn't hesitate, lowering its head and lifting her small frame, charging towards the passage. If it weren't for the attribute-enhancing food she had eaten earlier and the pre-applied defensive magic, her small body might have been torn apart by the Rhinoman's charge. Lefia was only a level 3 mage, no match in close combat. Even now, she was in great pain, hanging on the front of the rampaging Rhinoman like a puppet, almost losing consciousness from the jarring ride. As if things couldn't get worse, when Ryu and Ice were about to help, the Rhinoman at the corner was suddenly incinerated by an upward blast of dragon breath. Though Lefia was unharmed thanks to the protective magic, she was left dizzy and fell into a newly burned hole. Now, Lefia was completely separated from the main group. Judging by the still molten lava at the hole's edge, the power of the cannon dragon's breath was evident. With her abilities, she would likely be incinerated mid-air before even reaching the bottom. Ryu didn't have time to think. He abandoned the remaining Rhinoman and jumped into the hole where Lefia had fallen. Seeing Lefia below, eyes tightly shut, Ryu silently cursed. This girl must have put all her skill points into her Yuri talent. Even in a critical situation, she wasn't trying to save herself but had her eyes shut in fear. Do you think closing your eyes will stop the dragon from breathing fire on you? Despite his inner complaints, Ryu knew he had to save her. He adjusted his posture midair to minimize air resistance, positioning himself like a vertical penguin. He then swam through the air towards Lefia, reaching for her. When he finally grabbed her and held her in a classic Princess Carrie, Ice, who had dealt with the remaining enemies, followed them down. Lefia opened her eyes in surprise and screamed when she saw Ryu holding her. You, why is it you? Let go of me. Ryu suddenly remembered that elves, especially royal elves, had a kind of spiritual purity. They couldn't bear to be touched by anyone other than those they deeply trusted, not even their kin. But now was not the time for her purity obsessions and spoiled princess tantrums. Fury surged within Ryu. With a loud smack, he landed a heavy slap on Lefia's perky butt. Eek. Lefia jolted, her pointed ears standing straight up in shock. Quiet down, look at the situation we're in. Keep acting up, and I'll spank your little butt raw. You jerk, pervert, sex fiend. Lefia's eyes welled with tears as she screamed. Ryu raised his palm in a threatening manner, and Lefia swallowed the rest of her words, starting to sob quietly instead. Stop crying and think of a way to save yourself. Reveria should have taught you her defensive magic, Divine Savior's Chalice. Start chanting the spell. The defensive magic we cast earlier is about to wear off. As if to confirm Ryu's words, another blast of dragon breath shot up toward them. Perhaps sensing fewer people on their side, the cannon dragon aimed most of its breath in their direction. Several blasts later, although the magic and enhanced state from the food held up temporarily, Ryu could already feel a faint heat creeping in. The initial defensive magic was about to fail. How do you know Reveria taught me that spell? Lefia's face showed a mix of surprise and doubt. Wait, I've been tainted by you. I, who am no longer pure, have no right to stand beside Miss Ice anymore. I'd rather die than live like this. Boo-hoo Tilda. Lefia suddenly burst into tears. What kind of bizarre brain circuit is this? Are you a goblin in elf's clothing? Ryu felt an urge to pry open her head and see what kind of weirdness was inside. At that moment, Ice caught up to them, aided by wind magic. She flew to their side and started cutting through the dragon breaths aimed at them. Despite Ice's help, the situation remained dire. Ice rapier, designed for thrusting and being a light weapon, couldn't shatter the dragon's breaths completely, only reduce the damage. Ryu tried to persuade Lefia, but she stubbornly remained in her death-wishing state. Seeing Ice beside him, Ryu made a sudden decision. Ryu suddenly said, if you want to die, go ahead. But Ice has wind magic, and I'm tough. You'll be the only one going to hell, watching us live happily ever after. Saying this, Ryu pulled the dazed Ice close and planted a firm kiss on her cheek right in front of Lefia. Lefia's eyes widened in shock. Ice's face showed a confused expression, not yet understanding what was happening. With Ryu looking like a smug winner, arm wrapped around Ice's shoulders, Lefia's anger overpowered her shame. Miss Ice is mine, you'll never get rid of me. Fueled by her anger, Lefia seemed to have entered a berserk state. What she previously struggled to perform, parallel chanting, now came as easily as eating or drinking. Long incantations flowed effortlessly from Lefia's cherry red lips like a stream. In the name of Visan, I make this wish. Ancestors of the forest, noble kin, heed my voice. First, she used her unique magic, the elf ring. This was a special summoning magic that allowed her to use any magic previously used by her kin, provided she knew the spell and its effects. In simple terms, it was a replication magic specifically for the elven race. The reason she had to cast this spell first was due to the peculiar rules of this world. In this world, there was a strange rule. Even adventurers blessed with Falna could only have 3 magic slots, learning a maximum of 3 spells. Even inherently magical races like the elves couldn't surpass this limit by much. For instance, Reveria, a top-tier mage, could only use 9 spells and was thus titled 9 Hell. Ryu maliciously speculated that this might be a method the gods used to limit mortals. Lefia's 3 magic slots were already filled. But with Elf Ring, she could bypass this restriction and replicate nearly unlimited spells from her kin. Hence, she was given the beautiful title, Thousand Elf. At this point, Ryu couldn't help but internally gripe. It seemed that the creators had a special fondness for the word thousand. Despite having more grandiose options like infinite or endless for nicknames, they chose the modest thousand. While Ryu was lost in his random thoughts, Lefia's spell was nearing completion. Through Elf Ring, she summoned Reveria's Divine Savior's Chalice. A massive white magic shield instantly appeared in front of the trio. With the protection of the defensive magic, the 3 were immediately out of danger. As they neared the passage exit, a terrifying flame covered the ground below. They instantly recognized it as Reveria's signature spell, High Victory Sword. Terrifying magic flames rose in countless columns, covering nearly the entire 58th floor. Under the flames, all were equal. The cannon dragon and the new caterpillar-like monsters were reduced to ashes. The intense heat even burned magic stones and materials into nothing, leaving scorched earth in its wake. Ryu felt a great sense of relief. It seemed the main force that had gone ahead had completely turned the tide. When Ryu and the others landed on the ground, aside from the scorched earth, only a few enhanced cannon dragons, several times the size of regular ones, were still struggling. Leave one cannon dragon. Seeing the last few enhanced cannon dragons about to be killed, Ryu quickly called out to stop them. Bet and Tion, who were amid a massacre, instinctively looked at Finn. Seeing him nod, they left one heavily wounded cannon dragon alive and killed the rest. Lefia, are you alright? Lefia's close friend, Tiona, immediately rushed to her side, looking extremely worried. As long as you're not hurt. Reveria, Lefia's teacher, also stepped forward to check on her. Her gaze toward Ryu softened as well. Thank you, Mr. Gudao. Finn looked gratefully at Ryu. He naturally saw that without Ryu's intervention, they wouldn't have been able to save Lefia, the promising new member of their familia. With the replication magic elf ring, Lefia had limitless potential. The Loki familia was grooming her as Reveria's successor. Otherwise, with her rash personality and extreme lack of combat experience, she wouldn't be able to follow the main force. Ryu waved his hand. Even though he and Lefia were rivals in love, he couldn't just watch a young girl be burned to ashes. Come over and help me out. Get some blood from the dragon. I needed to mix a drink. After saying this, Ryu surprisingly took out various bottles and jars for mixing cocktails and sat down on the ground. Mr. Gudao? Finn looked puzzled. Ryu had to stop what he was doing to explain. This enhanced dragon can even resist Reveria's annihilation magic. Combined with the natural magical resistance of dragonkind, using their blood to mix a cocktail might yield some surprising results. Finn suddenly understood and quickly commanded the stronger members of the team, Bet, Tiona, and Gareth, to subdue the enhanced dragon, while Tion was responsible for drawing its blood. A large cup of thick, bubbling fresh blood was placed in front of Ryu. Ryu first dipped his pinky into the blood and tasted it. Even though it was just a drop, Ryu felt as if he had swallowed a ball of scorching fire. It burned from his throat down to his stomach. Despite the intense and terrifying effect, Ryu was not alarmed but rather pleased. He was more worried about no effect at all. With such an effect, once he mixed it into a cocktail, the resulting drink would be incredibly potent. Ryu then began recalling various cocktail mixing techniques, combining them with the rules he had explored in this world and continuously added various colored liquids into the cup. He looked like a wizard concocting a potion. 10 minutes later, Ryu had mixed a cup of gorgeous crimson liquid. Is it a success? Finn couldn't help but ask. I don't know, Ryu replied without turning his head. He played with the drink in his hand for a while before preparing to drink it. Suddenly, Ryu paused, put down the cup, took out a small shot glass barely larger than his thumb, poured a little of the drink into it, and then downed it in one go. Whoosh. Ryu immediately felt a flame rush from his stomach to his head. This was not an illusion. When Ryu opened his mouth, he spewed a thin stream of fire, startling everyone around him. Ryu quickly took out a bottle of healing potion and drank it. After a while, he showed a look of frustration, picked up the cup, and poured the liquid onto the ground. Sizzle. As soon as the liquid touched the ground, it spontaneously ignited. What is this? Finn couldn't help but look puzzled. Failure. The dragon blood's effect is too intense, Ryu briefly explained before diving back into his tense mixing work. After a while, Ryu picked up another cup of liquid, this time blue in color. Ryu poured another small glass and drank it in one gulp. Everyone watched him nervously, afraid he would spew fire again. This time, Ryu did not react and just shook his head. No effect, or rather, not the effect I wanted. Seeing the question in Finn's eyes, Ryu explained. Perhaps due to the previous effect being too strong, he had chosen to suppress the dragon blood's effect. As a result, this time it was overly suppressed, and the dragon blood's effect was completely nullified. Instead, the auxiliary ingredients effects were highlighted. Even though it was fire attribute dragon blood, he ended up mixing a cocktail that enhanced ice attribute resistance, which made Ryu feel helpless. Not wanting to waste it, Ryu still had them drink it. Mr. Gudao, should we? Finn's eyes showed some hesitation. Ryu naturally knew that Finn was worried about the time it would take to mix the dragon blood cocktail. Give me half an hour. If I succeed, it will increase the success rate by 10% to 20%, Ryu promised confidently. Finn gritted his teeth. I'll give you 1 hour. You won't be disappointed, Ryu replied with a confident smile. He then ignored everyone and focused completely on his task, entering his bartender mode. Time ticked by, but he was met with failure after failure. In the blink of an eye, 40 to 50 minutes had passed. Either the effect of the dragon blood was too strong, or it was overly suppressed, rendering it ineffective. Hurry up, will you? Bet, who was restraining the dragon, urged impatiently. To extract the dragon's blood, they had to keep the dragon alive. If it died, its corpse would be absorbed by the dungeon, making all their efforts futile. As a result, Bet and several other strong team members had to use their strength to forcibly restrain the dragon, which was exhausting over time. Seeing Ryu busying himself nonstop, even those close to him like Ice, Tiona, and Lefia couldn't help but show a hint of worry. Ignoring Bet's urging, Ryu was fully immersed in his world. At that moment, a flash of inspiration struck his mind. I've been failing because I've always tried to suppress the effects of the dragon blood to achieve balance. But as the ancient saying goes, it is better to channel than to block. Instead of trying to suppress the intense effects of the dragon blood, why not make it gentler and allow it to release its energy slowly? With this new approach, Ryu immediately changed the formula. After several experiments, he finally completed it just before the 1 hour limit. Did it work? Finn asked anxiously, as they had already wasted too much time. Ryu didn't answer but carefully examined the liquid in the glass. Compared to before, this drink seemed quite ordinary at first glance, except for its crystal clear, ruby-like appearance. Ryu picked up the glass and drank it in one gulp. Instantly, he felt like he was sitting in a heated room during a cold winter, enjoying the steaming hot pot, warming him from head to toe. Whoosh. A visible red magical ore emanated from his body, though it was very gentle. After a while, Ryu opened his eyes, unable to contain his joy. Success. Not only have my strength, endurance, and magic power greatly increased, but even my magical resistance and fire resistance have improved significantly. Even the usually composed Finn couldn't hide his excitement. He quickly urged everyone to drink the cocktail. Wow, what a drink. What's it called? Finn exhaled deeply. Ryu thought for a moment, raised his glass towards the light source above, and said, let's call it Dragon's Flame. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 34. The terrain of the 58th floor feels like being situated in the crater of an active volcano. The ground is scorching and glowing red, the sky is filled with a heavy blanket of volcanic ash, and occasionally the earth suddenly splits open with flames, accompanied by a massive outpouring of lava. Passing through the long tunnel from the 58th to the 59th floor, it completely transforms into another world. The jungle is dense, with thick mist permeating the forest, and the air is unbearably hot and humid. As soon as Ryu steps into the territory of the 59th floor, he feels as if his body is enveloped in a thin film of water, making him extremely uncomfortable. The 59th floor is a vast tropical rainforest. The high moisture content in the air, combined with the high temperature, quickly makes everyone drenched in sweat. Almost every member of the team has sweat streaming down their faces like rain. Are we there yet, Tilda? The lively Tiona couldn't resist asking first. Tiona, be patient. At Riveria's stern gaze, Tiona instinctively shrank her neck. Ryu glanced at Riveria. This elven archmage had authority in the Loki Familia second only to the captain, Finn. Whether it was because she naturally exuded coolness or not, she was wrapped tightly in her mage robe and hadn't sweat a single drop. Is there a problem? Riveria, very sensitive to being watched, immediately noticed his gaze. No, nothing. Ryu touched his nose. It was embarrassing enough to be caught peeking, but being caught red-handed was mortifying. Riveria slightly furrowed her brows but didn't say anything more. After this small incident, everyone fell back into the atmosphere of silently hurrying along. At this moment, Finn's expression changed slightly, and Riveria's pointed ears twitched. Right ahead, everyone, be on guard. Finn gave the order without hesitation. The members of the team, including the weapon repairer, Tsubaki, all readied their weapons and were on high alert. As they passed through a section of the jungle, their view suddenly opened up, revealing a terrifying and disgusting scene. A monster with a lower body like a plant's petals, an upper body resembling a chrysalis, and a head with dozens of tentacles, its size equivalent to a 2- or 3-story building, appeared before them. Its appearance was already repulsive, but it continuously grabbed caterpillar-like new monster species with its tentacles and shoved them into its mouth as if eating sausages. The sight made several of the cleanliness-loving girls' stomachs churn, almost making them vomit. So disgusting, what is that? Tiona exclaimed with a look of disgust. That should be a monster parasitized by a gem. The parasitized one should be a corpse flower king, a titan om. Riveria, knowledgeable as ever, immediately identified the monster. As they observed it, it kept shoving caterpillars into its mouth without pause. These caterpillars typically hunted monsters to seize the magic stones within them, but now, being devoured one by one as snacks by this creature, the amount of magical energy accumulating within it was unimaginable. Just the thought of it made everyone shiver, their expressions growing tense. Something's coming. Riveria, the most sensitive to changes, suddenly warned loudly. Perhaps sensing the spirit bloodline close to Ice, the monster, without finishing all the caterpillars, hurriedly began to hatch. Yes, it was hatching. The giant flower at the lower part of the plant started to swell continuously until the monster's upper body exploded like an overripe tomato, splattering purple juice everywhere. From within emerged a humanoid monster with purplish blue skin, resembling a female but magnified 3 or 4 times in size. Accompanied by her birth, a piercing banshee wail echoed throughout the entire 59th floor. Perhaps due to the astonishing amount of magic contained within her body, with each successive wail, the originally normal daylight of the 59th floor suddenly turned a deep purple hue. She had just been born, yet already caused such dramatic changes in the atmosphere. And this was merely her avatar. The power of the fallen spirit was terrifying beyond measure. Arya, Arya. As soon as the demi-spirit hatched, she repeatedly chanted the name of Ice Mother. Arya, let me devour you. When her gaze fell upon Ice, those eyeless sockets stared fixedly at her, the voice dripping with unmasked greed and malice. A dreadful aura immediately swept across the battlefield, pressing down on everyone like a mountain. It was an absolute suppression from a higher plane of existence, making it feel as if they were facing a deity's incarnation. Everyone, prepare for battle. Finn, truly deserving of his position as the leader, was the first to overcome the absolute suppression from the demi-spirit's aura. With a loud shout, his small, childlike body charged towards the enemy. Inspired by Finn's invisible momentum, Gareth, Tiona, Tion, and other members broke free from their fear and launched an assault on the demi-spirit. Arya, I've waited for you for so long. Let me devour you now. The demi-spirit shouted, raising her hands high. Whoosh. A massive wall of vine-like tentacles surged toward the group like an ocean wave. Time to hunt. Without hesitation, Ryu aimed a large fireball directly at her face. Though the demi-spirit's form of eating was literal, Ice was one of Ryu's future wives. Hearing this creature constantly shouting about devouring his future wife was intolerable, regardless of its anatomy. Facing Ryu's fireball, the fallen fairy didn't even attempt to block it, allowing the fireball to hit her face directly. However, the fallen fairy's avatar seemed to have high magic resistance. Ryu's fireball only produced a wisp of smoke on her face, without even burning a single strand of hair. Meanwhile, the close combat group was momentarily blocked by the vine wall, unable to approach. Taking advantage of this moment, the demi-spirit raised her hands high and began chanting a spell loudly. Speak, O earth, come forth, come forth, come forth, O shell of the earth, O gleam of black iron, O hammer of the stars. A large, complex, ochre-colored magic circle unfolded before her. It was enormous, almost as large as the demi-spirit herself, and inscribed with divine runes. No way, a monster that can chant spells. The group almost fainted from shock. From the first floor to the 58th, the Loki Familia, as experts in dungeon exploration, had never encountered any monster capable of chanting spells, not even the floor bosses. At most, they used innate abilities. The demi-spirit not only used chant-based magic but also performed highly difficult, extended chants coupled with combat casting. This unprecedented scenario left them dumbfounded. At this critical moment, Finn, as the commander, couldn't afford any distraction. Hearing the demi-spirit's chant and seeing the close combat group unable to break through, he immediately turned and shouted. Reveria. Years of teamwork made words unnecessary. Reveria instantly understood his intention. She interrupted her attack spell and began chanting a high-level barrier spell. Rise, O spirits of the air, masters of light. I contract with the guardians of the forest, to play the song of the earth, to shield and protect us. A complex magic circle spread out beneath Reveria's feet. Interrupt the enemy's chant with all your might. Finn commanded loudly. Yes. Those with ranged attack abilities launched their attacks on the demi-spirit. Even Tsubaki, the blacksmith, picked up a magic sword and fired lightning at her. However, the demi-spirit's face twisted into a contemptuous smile. Most of the attacks barely affected her, and for the few that posed any threat, the demi-spirit simply wrapped her upper body with petals from beneath her, causing the attacks to land on the petals and leave her unscathed. Despite the continuous barrage of attacks, the demi-spirit continued chanting her spell undisturbed. Meteor shower. Dimensional severance. The magic of the demi-spirit and Reveria was completed almost simultaneously. Everyone, retreat into Reveria's barrier. Finn shouted. Even before Finn finished speaking, everyone had already started retreating. As they gathered around Reveria, her barrier spell activated just in time. A semicircular, pale yellow, transparent shield enveloped them securely. At that moment, the demi-spirit's magic was also unleashed. A massive array of magic circles appeared in midair, followed by a downpour of flaming meteors from the sky. The colossal meteor shower covered an area spanning hundreds of meters. The ground trembled continuously, emitting a series of wails, and gigantic craters formed as the meteors struck, reducing all nearby caterpillars to ashes. Only the area beneath Reveria's magical shield remained untouched. Each time a meteor struck the shield, it wobbled, causing everyone's hearts to pound with fear. Hold on, Reveria. Keep it up, Reveria. You can do it. I know. Reveria gritted her teeth, pressing her staff firmly to the ground. With no other options, the group could only offer her words of encouragement. Ryu hid beneath the shield, clenching his fists tightly. Watching the catastrophic scene outside the barrier, he felt powerless. After a long while, the bombardment outside the shield seemed to cease. The area around the barrier was almost entirely sunken by the meteor shower. Without a word, Ryu suddenly dashed out of the shield. Mr. Gudao, wait. Finn called out. Ryu ignored him. Having read the original story, Ryu knew that due to underestimating the demi-spirit's magical prowess, Finn chose to remain within the barrier, only for the demi-spirit to launch a series of consecutive and rapid chants, followed by another devastating spell, nearly wiping out the entire team. They couldn't afford to remain passive. A mage is at their weakest while chanting a spell. If they didn't attack now, when would they? Finn? Everyone immediately turned their gaze to Finn, awaiting his command. The buffs on us haven't worn off yet. Charge. Finn decisively ordered. The melee group immediately followed Ryu in a charge. Reveria, Lefia, switch to attack magic. Finn shouted, then charged forward without looking back. Reveria, usually calm and composed, wanted to object, but seeing even Finn charging ahead, years of trust made her grit her teeth and abandon her defensive magic, starting to chant an offensive spell. Soon, the flames will be released, the imminent warfire, unavoidable destruction. Lefia also began chanting the spell for Arc's Ray upon seeing this. As expected by Ryu, just as the meteor shower ceased, the demi-spirit, completely disregarding basic rules, had no skill cooldown period or casting lag and immediately began chanting another spell at an even faster speed. In the name of the proxy, I command you, I am bestowed the name Salamander, the embodiment of flames, the king of fire. This time, the chanting speed was too fast. The meteor shower had just stopped, and the demi-spirit spell was nearly complete. Everyone was terrified by this, as the melee group had just approached the vine wall, and the two elven mages were only halfway through their chants, leaving them caught off guard and on the brink of a team wipeout. As she chanted the final part, Ryu had just reached the vine wall. Don't think you're the only one with a trump card. Facing such a critical moment, Ryu showed no sign of nervousness, instead smirking. Revis, do it now. With Ryu's shout, to everyone's shock, a red-haired figure suddenly appeared behind the demi-spirit. You really know how to order people around. Though Revis complained, her movements were swift. She swung her large serrated, blood-marked machete and slashed fiercely at the demi-spirit's waist from the side. Ah. The demi-spirit, not expecting a betrayal from her ally, was almost cut in two, completely defenseless. Receiving such a severe injury, the chant was immediately interrupted, and she suffered significant backlash from forcibly halting the spell. Who is she? Finn asked, puzzled. You mean Revis? Captain Finn, you must know that the strongest fortress is often easiest to breach from within. Ryu responded with a meaningful expression. Seize the opportunity, let's attack quickly. Seeing Finn about to say something, Ryu hurriedly cut him off. Finn opened his mouth, but considering the demi-spirit's severe injury, realizing it was a prime chance for a counterattack, he swallowed his words. Assault. Finn brandished his spear. The members of the Loki Familia immediately followed suit. At this moment, Ryu also delivered a heavy punch to the vine wall. This time, luck was on his side, triggering the explosive flame effect. Boom. With a loud bang, a large hole was blasted open in the vine wall. Just as Ryu was about to rush in, a strong sense of danger overwhelmed him, causing him to instinctively dodge to the side. Whoosh. A sharp sound pierced the air as a vine whipped towards the spot where he had just broken through the wall. If he hadn't dodged quickly, he would have been skewered. Young man, move aside. A sudden shout came from behind Ryu. Dwarf shield warrior Gareth rushed up, grabbed the vine with one hand, and wildly hacked at it with his giant axe in the other. The vine was severed in just a few strikes. Gareth then pulled the broken wall apart, creating a gap wide enough for two people to pass through side by side. The rest of you, charge in. Ice, start powering up, the final blow is yours, Finn ordered. Ice nodded and stepped back slightly. At this point, Revis, who had dealt a critical blow to the demi-spirit, was tangled in an endless mass of vines. Under the terrifying magic power, the gaping wound at the demi-spirit's waist, which nearly split her in half, began to heal at a visible speed. You, how dare you betray me, how dare you? The demi-spirit, formerly mocking and arrogant, was now twisted with fury. Betrayal? We were just using each other, when was there ever any trust? Revis replied. Then die. The demi-spirit commanded, as her vines danced like venomous snakes, launching a relentless attack on Revis. Revis quickly found herself struggling to hold her ground, her body covered in numerous cuts. Redhead over there, hold on, we're coming. At that moment, Tiona and Tion rushed in first. Despite her petite figure, Tiona wielded a giant double-bladed sword almost as tall as herself, slicing through the vines like a lawnmower. Tion, armed with dual daggers, protected Tiona from behind, covering her. The two sisters, perfectly in sync, reached Revis in just a few breaths. With reinforcements, the three formed a wedge, charging towards the demi-spirit. Die. Werewolf Bat launched an attack from another side, attempting to alleviate the pressure on the trio. As for Gareth and Finn, one cleared the path while the other covered the flanks. Their precise coordination brought them alongside Tiona, Revis, and the others, reaching the demi-spirit simultaneously. Ryu arrived a step later. Almost the entire melee group was now in front of the demi-spirit. A mage surrounded by warriors, her fate was sealed. Naturally, the demi-spirit wouldn't sit still. Cunning as she was, she revealed another trump card once everyone was close. In the name of the proxy, I command you, I am bestowed the name Tinnitrus, the embodiment of lightning, king of thunder. It's a short chant. Defend yourselves. Only Ryu remained calm. If the dragon's flame, which he had spent a full hour preparing, couldn't even block a minor spell, it would ruin his reputation. Thunder aura. With a sharp cry from the demi-spirit, a magic circle crackling with electric light appeared before her. Countless blue lightning serpents then surged towards the group. Tiona and Tion instinctively shielded their faces. However, the so-called thunder aura turned out to be all bark and no bite. Striking the group, it only emitted faint red glows, which stood firm against the lightning serpents. Seeing this impressive effect, Finn silently praised his own wise decision. At this moment, the two elven mages completed their spells. First, Lephia's Arc's ray rained fire down on the demi-spirit. Struggling to raise her petals, she barely managed to block the attack, but Finn seized the opportunity and threw his twin spears. The sharp spears pierced through the petals, stabbing directly into the demi-spirit's eyes. With a loud boom, the spears exploded. Ryu instinctively glanced at Finn, surprised that such a small, childlike figure could be so cunning. Although, he wasn't bad either. The demi-spirit, just half dead from Finn's treacherous blow, was now being mercilessly attacked by Tiona's large sword, Tion's throwing knives, and Gareth's giant axe. At this moment, Reveria's magic arrived. Several towering pillars of fire swept toward the demi-spirit, enveloping her in flames. Seeing the fire pillars that didn't harm any of their comrades, Ryu's eyes narrowed. Reveria indeed lived up to her reputation as Orario's top mage. Her control over magic was worlds apart from the half-baked Lephia. Ah! Burned by the fire magic, the demi-spirit finally let out a scream of agony. At this time, a figure wrapped in green wind appeared suddenly in the sky. It was Ice, who had just finished powering up. With wind magic swirling around her, Ice resembled a giant drill, hurtling towards the demi-spirit. The demi-spirit, clutching her eyes and wailing in pain, seemed powerless to resist. Facing the seemingly defenseless enemy, everyone, including Ice, let down their guard a bit. However, just as Ice got close, the cunning monster suddenly dropped her hands from her eyes, opening her mouth wide. There was yet another spell hidden in her mouth, clearly reserved for Ice. In such a critical situation, everyone was caught off guard. Even Ice showed a hint of shock. But Ice, now in midair, had no choice but to press forward. I've been wary of this move. A confident voice suddenly echoed. A figure seemed to leap out from the shadows, appearing instantly beside the demi-spirit's face. It was Nguyen Ryu. Earlier, when the demi-spirit was playing dead, Ryu had silently used the ring's shadow stealth to hide himself, waiting to launch a fatal strike against her. Just as the demi-spirit had schemed against Ice, Ryu had been scheming against her. And this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. At this moment, the demi-spirit's attention was almost entirely on Ice. Arya, I've been waiting for you. Let me devour you. The demi-spirit said, opening her arms wide towards Ice. Just as the demi-spirit opened her mouth, ready to unleash Frozen Blade, Ryu, who had suddenly appeared beside her, landed a fierce hook punch on her face. Her huge face caved in immediately, causing her to involuntarily tilt to one side. The Frozen Blade spell naturally missed its mark. Tempest. With Ice's sharp cry, the power of her wind magic spiked to its maximum, easily piercing through the demi-spirit. Ryu followed up with a powerful double-fisted slam on the top of the monster's head. First, Ice's attack pierced through her, and then Ryu's double fist smashed her down. The upper body of the demi-spirit was reduced to a bloody pulp, clearly dead beyond any doubt. Just as everyone waited for the demi-spirit to turn to ashes, a sudden change occurred. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 35. The mutation did not manifest outwardly but began within the soul of the parasitized floor boss, Corpse Flower King Titan Om. On the other side, the group that had just killed the demi-spirit began to gradually let down their guard. They watched the motionless corpse with suspicion. Ryu felt a bit puzzled. Wasn't there supposed to be some kind of demonic mutation? Why was there no sign of it yet? Was the system playing a joke on him? Hey, Finn, why hasn't this thing turned into a magic stone yet? Seeing that the demi-spirit had turned into a corpse and yet, after quite some time, showed no signs of life nor turned into a magic stone, Tiona couldn't help but poke at the unrecognizable corpse with her double-bladed sword. Who knows, maybe it's because it's a new species, Finn joked with a smile. Killing the boss meant that the 59th floor had been completely conquered by the Loki Familia, achieving a feat that even the Zeus and Hera Familias hadn't reached. With this, the achievements of the Loki Familia reached new heights, and their fame would become even more widespread. For Finn, both as the leader of the group and someone determined to revive the Palom race, this was something worth celebrating. However, none of the people present knew that the floor boss, whose soul was about to dissipate in return, was undergoing a quiet transformation. A wisp of pure blackness, without a trace of impurity, like the deepest part of the abyss, wrapped around the floor boss's soul that was about to dissipate. Just a glance at it would taint one's soul with its sludge. The floor boss's soul, already fragile and easily possessed by the demi-spirit, now on the brink of dissipating, had become like a public toilet, accessible to anyone. In an instant, the pure black sludge that appeared in the void devoured the dissipating soul completely. Then, having absorbed the nourishment, the sludge suddenly expanded and transformed into an egg-like shape, as if nurturing something inside. Thump tilde. Ryu inexplicably heard a sound resembling a heartbeat. The instant this sound echoed, a strong sense of foreboding gripped his heart, triggering an intense warning. According to Scathach, this was the so-called warrior's intuition, something all warriors who had experienced numerous brutal battles would have to some extent. Some exceptionally talented warriors even honed it into special skills like mind's eye or intuition. Since this was said by Scathach, a female war god who nearly reached the pinnacle of warriors, it must be true. Be careful, something is about to come out. Ryu immediately shouted a warning. Everyone looked at him with strange expressions. The boss had already been defeated. What was there to worry about? Perhaps due to some kind of connection provided by the system, only Ryu sensed the impending danger. Seeing Tiona still naively playing with the corpse, Ryu couldn't help but shout, "Tiona, get away from that thing." Maybe it was his urgent tone, or perhaps the trust built from fighting side by side, but Tiona instinctively moved away from the corpse even though she didn't understand why. That instant saved her life. What the? Just as Tiona uttered a word, a black lightning bolt struck the spot where she had been standing. Looking closer, it was a thick, black, bone-spiked, disgusting tentacle. Had Tiona not moved away in time, it would have pierced through her instantly. Everyone, stay alert. Finn immediately commanded. Ignoring their wounds and exhaustion, everyone picked up their weapons again, aiming at the heap that could no longer be called a corpse, a mass of continuously writhing flesh. The plant-like remains of the demi-spirit were devoured almost instantly, leaving a bizarre mass behind. No head, no facial features, seemingly no sensory organs, no limbs, no fixed body. It was entirely a mass of flesh, a mass of black, mud-like flesh. Aside from its main body, there were nearly 100 black, bone-spiked tentacles that had almost assassinated Tiona. From a distance, it looked like a giant jellyfish lying flat on the ground, mutated by oil pollution. Everyone, fall back. Reveria, Lefia, magic attack. Finn commanded loudly without turning his head. Ryu nodded silently. This command was correct. Before knowing the strength of the opponent, using long-range attacks to probe was cautious and prudent. Due to years of tacit understanding, almost as soon as Finn called out their names, Reveria raised her staff and began chanting the spell for ecstasy, Fimbulvetter. Reveria did not choose the strongest attack spell but instead opted for the large-scale freezing magic with strong control effects, showcasing her rich combat experience. In contrast, Lefia seemed a bit flustered. Upon Finn's command, the dazed Lefia, who had been staring at the jellyfish-like monster, hastily responded, yes. Yet, she couldn't decide on a spell immediately. Ultimately, she imitated her teacher, using Elf Ring to summon Reveria's ecstasy, Fimbulvetter. Stimulated by the magical fluctuations, the jellyfish-like monster, which had been slowly writhing and occasionally extending tentacles to devour remaining caterpillars, suddenly launched an attack on the group. Dozens of tentacles shot towards the group like lightning. Without needing Finn's reminder, Gareth immediately switched to his dual-handed shield and positioned himself in front of the group. However, everyone, including Ryu himself, underestimated the horror of the magical mutation. Crack. The tower shield, endowed with the unbreakable attribute, 5 centimeters thick and infused with numerous precious materials, as strong as a city wall, was pierced effortlessly by the tentacle as if it were paper. One tentacle, undeterred, pierced through Gareth's tower shield and aimed for his chest. Squelch. The full body heavy armor Gareth wore offered no resistance either. His sturdy body was easily impaled, and he was subsequently thrown away by the tentacle. Old man. Bet, who had the closest relationship with Gareth, was instantly enraged and launched an attack on the jellyfish-like monster without hesitation. Bet, come back. Finn shouted in alarm, but Bet ignored him. While running, he ignited the gem on his leg armor. The ignited leg armor burst into flames, making Bet's legs appear to be burning. Bet leapt into the air and delivered a fierce kick from above at the jellyfish-like monster. However, the strike, powerful enough to split mountains and rocks, did not affect the jellyfish-like monster. The area struck first dented inward, then rebounded like rubber, sending Bet flying. While Bet was still midair, with no place to land, a tentacle from the monster whipped towards him like a lash. Its speed was so fast that only a blur could be seen, and it made no sound. Only after a while did the sound of air being torn apart reach them, indicating that the tentacle had broken the sound barrier. This blow, combining speed and power, struck Bet, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. He was sent flying like a cannonball, crashing into the ground with a boom. As the dust settled, it revealed Bet, covered in blood and barely breathing in the pit. With just one hit, an LV5 high-level adventurer was left with half a life. Damn it. In just one encounter, 2 members were severely injured. Even Finn, usually so composed, was now furious. He forced himself to calm down and issued commands one by one. Tiona, Tion, use spirit medicine on them immediately. Everyone, retreat. The Amazon sisters quickly took out the spirit medicine, bit off the wooden stoppers, and poured the star blue liquid onto Gareth and Bet's wounds. The spirit medicine lived up to its name. The originally gushing wounds stopped bleeding immediately, and the wounds began to heal slowly at a visible speed. Tion carried Bet at her waist, while Tiona hoisted Gareth onto her shoulders. He's so heavy. Tiona almost collapsed under Gareth's weight as she lifted him, but with Tion's help, she managed to stand firm. Gareth, with his robust body and heavy full body armor, probably weighed no less than 500 kilograms. If it weren't for Tiona's high strength attribute, she might have been crushed immediately. Seeing the group retreating, the jellyfish-like monster immediately launched an attack, with hundreds of tentacles surging toward them like a swarm of snakes. Fortunately, Finn had previously ordered the mages to chant control magic, and at this moment, the spell was just completed. Ecstasy, Fimbulvetter, *2. To match Lefia's chanting speed, Reveria deliberately slowed down her own. The 2 spells were completed almost simultaneously. The combined magic formed a huge magic circle, from which a blizzard mixed with hail erupted and rushed toward the jellyfish-like monster. The effect of 2 elven mages chanting the same spell was greater than 1 + 1 = 2. Wherever the cold wind passed, everything, whether it was the ground or the sky, was frozen. The entire 59th floor seemed to turn into a world of ice crystals. The jellyfish-like monster was not spared either, being firmly imprisoned in the frost and turning into a highly grotesque statue. Only a narrow passage was left for the group to retreat through. Crack. Just as everyone was about to take advantage of this opportunity to retreat, a cracking sound suddenly echoed. A huge crack appeared on the ice statue formed by the jellyfish-like monster, and soon, all the frost on its surface shattered. The combined power of 2 of Orario's top elven mages, using their dual-cast large-scale freezing magic, had only managed to hold the monster for less than a minute. You guys go first, I'll cover the rear. Finn immediately realized that without someone to cover their retreat, no one would escape. As the leader, Finn turned back without hesitation. Captain. Tion, seeing this, directly threw Bet to a companion and stood beside Finn herself. Tion, what are you doing? I order you to retreat immediately. That's an order from your captain. Finn was so anxious that his eyes almost flared with anger. Facing such a terrifying monster, those covering the rear were almost certain to face death. However, Tion, who usually obeyed Finn's orders the most, ignored him this time, silently standing beside Finn with her twin daggers in hand. Seeing her sister stop, Tiona, without thinking, threw Gareth to Revis, while Bet ended up in Ryu's hands. Ice had already silently stood beside Finn. Looking at his disobedient teammates next to him, Finn showed a gratified smile. At this point, except for the severely injured and immobile Bet and Gareth, the entire Loki Familia's melee team chose to stay behind to cover the retreat. You guys. Ryu's eyes showed an incredulous expression. Coming from a cold modern society, despite having experienced the brutal survival environment of the gladiator arena, Ryu still couldn't understand. What kind of belief motivated them to willingly sacrifice themselves to save their teammates? No, this couldn't be simply explained by camaraderie. This was a bond of sharing life and death, like brothers in arms, like family. This was why their team wasn't called a guild, but a familia. Though they came from all over the world, even different races, under the leadership of one main god, they formed a big family, viewing each other as a family without blood ties. Mr. Gudao, I'll leave Bet and Gareth to you, Finn said with a calm expression as if he didn't care about heading toward certain death. But Ryu hesitated, his face showing uncertainty as he opened his mouth. Are you kidding? Put me down. Beth, who was being carried at Ryu's waist, started to struggle, clearly wanting to stay and face the danger with his familia. Young lady, I'm not so old that I can't walk. Put me down immediately. Gareth, on Reva's shoulder, also began to struggle. What are you two saying? As your captain, I order you to rest properly. We'll catch up shortly. Finn smiled slightly. Damn it, you arrogant little human. Gareth cursed Finn, but his eyes were already red with emotion. You bastard, if you don't put me down, I'll kick you to death once I'm healed. Beth's eyes were also red, and he directly threatened Ryu, who was carrying him. Unlike the sluggish demi-spirit, the jellyfish-like monster, having just broken free from the frost, used its tentacles to propel itself forward. Its massive body slid towards them like a skater and reached them in just a few moments. At such a terrifying speed, they couldn't escape without someone covering the rear. Please, Finn said, holding his twin spears, and without looking back, he charged at the approaching monster. Everyone, follow the captain. Tion moved almost simultaneously with Finn. Tiona and Ice followed closely behind. Only 4 people, yet they charged fearlessly at the seemingly invincible enemy. All to give their remaining comrades a sliver of hope for survival. At this moment, Revis looked at Ryu, clearly waiting for him to make a decision. With a dark expression, Ryu, still carrying Bet, turned and walked away without a word. As they reached Riveria and Lefia, the 2 elven mages, along with Tsubaki, were tirelessly casting spells at the jellyfish-like monster. Ryu opened his mouth, but seeing the unwavering determination on their faces, he couldn't say anything. Tsubaki, you and Mr. Gudao should retreat, Riveria suddenly said. What about you? There's no sense in abandoning family to escape alone, Riveria said with a pure smile as if she was not preparing for death but going to reunite with her familia. Lefia, you should go with them. Take care of Loki from now on, Riveria added, turning to Lefia. No, they're my familia too. Lefia, who Ryu had always seen as timid and clumsy, now shone with a light that made him feel ashamed. I see. Riveria no longer persuaded her, smiling with relief as she began chanting again. Lefia, with unprecedented focus, continuously cast spell after spell. Good luck in battle. Tsubaki bowed deeply to Riveria, her single eye filled with complex emotions, and then left with Ryu. As they retreated, Ryu felt as if his consciousness had left his body, watching himself move like a lifeless shell from above. How pathetic Tilda. Ryu didn't know why Scathach, who had promised to be his last resort, hadn't arrived on time. But it no longer mattered. Revis, tell me, am I a coward? The red-haired swordswoman stopped as well. Her expression remained unchanged, but her dragon-like, slit pupils grew more profound. You are not one of Loki's familia. So, this is quite reasonable. Ryu showed a self-deprecating smile. Besides, survival is the instinct of any creature. Yes, instinct, yet, among creatures, humans, who are said to possess the greatest wisdom and reason, can sometimes ignore this instinct. Why do you think that is? Ryu looked back. There, the members of Loki's familia were engaged in a life-and-death battle with the invincible enemy. Perhaps it's because they have something more important than their own lives in their hearts. Revis's face showed a trace of reminiscence. Something more important than their own lives. Revis, if I turn back now, what would you think of me? Then you would be the most foolish person in the world, but also the best master I've chosen. Ha ha ha, then let me be this fool. Ryu suddenly laughed, tossing the belt around his waist to Tsubaki. Lady Tsubaki, I'll leave this dumb wolf in your care. With that, Ryu charged towards the battlefield without looking back, ignoring Tsubaki's shouts and Revis's complex gaze. At that moment, Ryu suddenly felt as if he had shed some kind of shackle. In that instant, a memory of a conversation with Scathach flashed in his mind. Despite Ryu's attributes reaching the minimum standard of a servant, the demoted noble phantasm, crying warmonger, showed no signs of recovery. Out of curiosity, he mentioned this to Scathach. The queen of the land of shadows had a strange expression. Instead of directly answering his question, she asked an unrelated question. What do you think a noble phantasm is? Isn't it the legendary armament praised in the legends of heroic spirits, a materialized miracle, the proof of a hero owned by a servant, the crystallization of human wishes for miracles? Ryu recited the standard answer from Wiki. Then why are there distinctions like anti-unit, anti-army, anti-fortress, and anti-divine? Scathach, abandoning her usual aloofness, guided him patiently. Because the legends and anecdotes of heroic spirits during their lifetime were believed and praised by people. For instance, an anti-unit noble phantasm has slain a single powerful enemy, while an anti-army one has annihilated an entire army. That's correct. The noble phantasm a heroic spirit possesses depends on the legends and beliefs attributed to them. Scathach nodded and continued. But have you ever thought about this? Before they became heroic spirits, those people were just like you, mere mortals. When faced with invincible enemies, vast armies, impregnable fortresses, or even supreme gods, what gave them the courage to launch a desperate attack? Were they foolish? Was it for wealth or power? No, it might have been faith, glory, or perhaps just a promise that gave them unwavering courage and absolute confidence. Her crimson eyes, like the god-slaying spear in her hand, pierced through, making Ryu shiver. Want to wield an anti-army noble phantasm? Without the courage to face an army alone, how can you wield an anti-army noble phantasm? Without the confidence to defeat an army alone, how can you summon the crystallization of human wishes for miracles? At the time, Ryu only half understood Scathach's words. But at this moment, in this instant, Ryu understood. Attributes insufficient, conditions lacking, none of that mattered. A noble phantasm is the crystallization of faith, the pinnacle of idealism. Viewing it through a materialistic lens meant he could never grasp its essence. What he needed now was simply the courage to challenge the unbeatable enemy head-on and the confidence to achieve victory. Ryu seemed to see in his soul a colorful orb once chained suddenly breaking free. Surging magical power began to circulate wildly from his heart. If he were to open his system panel at that moment, he would find the demoted noble phantasm, crying warmonger, starting to emit a radiant, colorful glow. When Ryu returned to the battlefield, the scene was horrific. Almost all the members of Loki's familia were gravely injured. Tiona and Tion had both broken their legs and lay on the ground, unable to move. Finn had a broken arm and was relying solely on his spear to fend off the enemy. Ice had a long gash from her left shoulder to her right abdomen. If it had been any deeper, she would have been completely disemboweled. Even though her wound was still bleeding, Ice continued her fierce attacks on the enemy without uttering a word. The 2 elven mages at the rear were also severely wounded. Riveria had a large hole in her abdomen. Having just taken a divine elixir, her wound was slowly healing, but her face was ashen. Leaning on her staff, Riveria barely managed to chant her spells. Lefia, who loved cleanliness the most, was covered in various cuts and bruises. Despite her disheveled state, she had not given up. With such severe injuries, it wouldn't be surprising if any of them collapsed at any moment. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 36. No more delays. In just a few short minutes, the main force of one of Orario's strongest familias, the Loki familia, was about to be annihilated here. With a decision already made in his heart, Ryu began to recklessly and desperately use magic to enhance his body. The violent magic easily tore through his body's tissues, every muscle, and every inch of blood vessel. In an instant, he became covered in blood, but the injuries he sustained triggered the effect of his noble phantasm, crying warmonger, causing a massive amount of magic power to be generated every second. Supported by this magic, his Goliath card Mystic Code granted him super speedy recovery abilities. Injury, generating massive magic power, recovery, and so on, in a continuous cycle. Ryu was accumulating magic power within his body in this extreme, self-destructive manner. At the same time, he transitioned from walking to running, accelerating as he entered the battlefield. With the terrifying magic enhancement, every step he took caused the ground to tremble, with each footprint deeper and heavier than the last. First, there were footprints, then deep holes, and finally, with every step he took, a massive semicircular pit would form on the ground, with the surrounding earth cracking open. This was no longer a human, it was a humanoid dragon. His speed also increased from normal walking to running, until eventually, only a series of afterimages and circular pits on the ground could be seen. The members of the Loki Familia were all shocked as they watched Ryu return to the battlefield. They couldn't believe that, as an outsider, he would come back. Get out of the way, Ryu roared. Finn instinctively stepped aside. Ice, who was about to launch an attack, turned her head instinctively upon hearing the voice behind her. Facing such a formidable enemy, she couldn't afford even a moment's distraction. The terrifying jellyfish-like monster immediately split into dozens of tentacles, viciously stabbing Ice. Ice managed to avoid 90% of them, but there was one she simply couldn't dodge. It's over. Ice watched helplessly as two tentacles covered in disgusting bone spurs stabbed toward her, time seemingly slowing down, allowing her to see the barbs on the bone spurs in detail. It will hurt a lot. I'm so unwilling to die in a place like this. I haven't gained more power, haven't caught up to my mother's footsteps, haven't thanked that person. Ice closed her eyes, waiting for the final moment to come. Go back to sleep once you've had enough rest, but for now, take it easy, girl. A familiar chuckle suddenly sounded in her ear. You. Ice opened her eyes in surprise, finding herself held in Ryu's arms, having dodged the lethal strike. Looking at him, she saw his abdomen had been pierced by a tentacle, and the bone spurs on it were constantly wriggling, seemingly gnawing at his flesh. Ice instinctively placed her hand under his wound, as if trying to hold something in, but only caught a handful of blood. Don't worry, it just hurts a bit, Ryu said, his face pale from massive blood loss. Why? The face rarely showing emotional fluctuation was now filled with guilt, regret, and pain. I just rushed up to save you, didn't think that much. Seeing Ice still wanting to speak, Ryu directly threw her to a safe distance. You rest there for a while, I'll be quick. In midair, Ice suddenly stretched out her hand, trying hard to grab Ryu's clothes, her eyes full of reluctance and fear. This scene seemed to evoke memories she didn't want to recall. No, don't leave me. Ice screamed, stretching out her arm, desperately trying to grab Ryu's sleeve like a child abandoned by their parents. But with Ryu's current strength, even she couldn't resist, she was thrown far away. Ryu then slowly turned back, looking at the oblivious jellyfish-like monster, his gaze turning icy. Enjoying your meal? Now it's my turn, Ryu smiled conceitedly, gripping the tentacle that had pierced his body. With a ripping sound, Ryu effortlessly tore off the tentacle that the Loki Familia had struggled to damage. The sudden pain caused the jellyfish-like monster to scream miserably. Meanwhile, Ryu's wound rapidly healed, leaving only a tear in his clothing. With tens to hundreds of times more magic power surging within him, Ryu felt unprecedentedly powerful. There was nothing left to fear. Die. Ryu stomped the ground, shattering it into a 100-meter diameter crater, and in an instant, he appeared directly in front of the jellyfish-like monster. He threw a punch, and the sky and earth seemed to change. Before his fist even made contact, the terrifying pressure from the wind of his punch compressed the jellyfish-like monster's body, as if struck by an invisible giant fist. An invisible shockwave spread from Ryu's fist, sending debris flying everywhere. When his fist finally landed on the jellyfish-like monster, its body caved inward uncontrollably. Behind it, a white circular shockwave blasted into the distant forest, toppling and uprooting trees like a hurricane. Despite the severe damage, the demonic mutation monster continued to roar furiously, its vitality astonishingly strong. Ryu's expression remained unchanged. There's nothing a punch can't solve. If one punch doesn't work, then two punches, and if two punches don't work, then countless punches. He would fight until it was over. Plus ultra. Ryu slowly and steadily retracted his fist to his side. The demonic mutation, unwilling to be defeated, raised all its tentacles and rained them down on him like a storm. Even before the tentacles hit, the air was filled with the sound of them tearing through it. Watch out. Ice, wanting to rush forward to help Ryu, was stopped by Finn. Ice, don't go. That's no longer a battlefield we can step into, Finn said, his eyes complicated as he watched the myth-like battle unfold. Go, brother, smash it, Tiona shouted childishly, then winced. Ow, ow, ow. Sister, be gentle. Her sister, Tion, was treating her wounds with a healing potion, and hearing this, her face changed, pinching Tiona's cheek. The Loki Familia had already fully retreated from the battle, with the two elven mages starting to heal each other's wounds. Facing the overwhelming tentacles, Ryu's retracted fist suddenly struck out, causing a loud explosion in the air. His force was hundreds of times stronger than the demonic mutation. With a flash of his fist, he severed hundreds of tentacles in an instant. The jellyfish-like monster let out a sharp scream, black, sludge-like blood gushing from the severed tentacles. This was just the beginning. Ryu retracted his fist again, gathering power, and then struck out. The jellyfish-like monster caved in again, this time with a significantly larger area than before. Ryu's expression remained unchanged as he retracted his fist again, beginning to gather his strength. Sensing its life was in danger, the jellyfish-like monster suddenly spewed out a large cloud of black mist. The black mist quickly spread towards Ryu, dissolving everything in its path completely. Ryu punched again, and the mere wind from his punch blew the all-dissolving black mist back, once more causing the jellyfish-like monster to cave in. The jellyfish-like monster suddenly emitted a piercing screech. Following this sound, 4 purple-black magic circles appeared in front of it. From the magic circles, 4 giant bears composed entirely of shadows charged at Ryu with bared fangs and claws. Ryu merely punched again, dispersing the shadow bears instantly. No matter how many transformations you have, I will break them with a single punch. As time passed, the magic power Ryu accumulated grew more and more, and the enhancements from Mana Burst became increasingly terrifying. By now, he might already rival a real heroic spirit. Ryu took a deep breath and shouted, "Ha ha ha ha, wonderful, this pain is honor, this pain is life, crying warmonger." Then he delivered the final punch. This punch raised a terrifying storm on the entire 59th floor, causing the entire dungeon to shake from top to bottom, and the punch itself transformed into light. A massive white beam of light instantly blasted towards the demonic mutation monster. Within the beam of light, the jellyfish was vaporized in an instant. The unimpeded beam continued to extend infinitely into the distance, striking the dungeon wall and blasting upwards. Thus, today, everyone in Orario witnessed an unprecedented miraculous scene. A white beam of light burst from the ground, shooting skyward at an angle, resembling a tilted pillar of heaven from afar. The beam gradually thinned and dispersed after a long while. The members of the Loki Familia also witnessed an unprecedented sight. A ray of sunlight shone through the massive hole created by the beam. This was the first time they had seen real sunlight in the dungeon, thousands of meters underground. The sunlight shone directly on Ryu, casting a rainbow-hued glow around him as if crowning him. Watching the figure bathed in the radiant light, Finn murmured, "This is the true stance of a hero from myth and epic." Click, click, click. A series of hurried footsteps sounded as Ice, disregarding everyone's gaze, ran swiftly and embraced the staggering Ryu. Brother is amazing. Ice is so bold. Tiona immediately turned into a gossiping onlooker, only to be silenced by a loving iron fist from her sister. Ah, youth is wonderful. Finn sighed like an old man. At this moment, Reveria walked up beside him. Finn glanced at her and saw that Reveria was looking at the embracing pair with a complex expression. Don't overthink it. At least he is completely worthy of our princess, Finn advised. Reveria sighed softly, her expression like that of a mother about to see her daughter get married after many years of raising her. Thus, the Loki Familia completed their exploration of the 59th floor, reaching unprecedented heights, and Ryu fulfilled the system's task of eliminating the demonic mutation. As the battle concluded, Revis and Tsubaki also returned with Bed and Gareth. Except for Revis, the other three hurriedly went to care for their injured companions. Only Revis stood apart, gazing from a distance at the heroic figure in the center of the battlefield, embraced by the beautiful princess, her eyes filled with complex emotions. At that moment, a voice came from the shadow of a nearby boulder. It looks like my presence isn't needed. The voice was cold and aloof. It's you. Revis instinctively placed her hand on the giant sword strapped to her back, but her dragon-like vertical pupils narrowed slightly when she saw who it was. Are you sure you want to draw your sword against me? Scathach, hidden in the shadows, spoke in a matter-of-fact tone, but Revis could hear the contempt and arrogance within. A drop of sweat rolled down Revis's forehead as she placed her hand on the hilt of her sword, unable to draw it. She knew she had no chance of winning, not even 1 in 10,000. With Revis's pride, she looked down on even demi-spirit, but she dared not be disrespectful to this female war god. What brings you here? Revis asked cautiously. My disciple is here, so of course I came to check on him, Scathach replied nonchalantly. So he's your disciple. I thought he was your enemy, given how cruel and heartless you are, letting him face such a powerful foe alone. Revis couldn't help but feel a surge of anger and sarcastically retorted. Since Ryu had explained the situation to her, Revis knew the plan. Scathach, as the final backup, had been mentioned. However, Scathach had not come to their aid as agreed. If Ryu hadn't broken through at the last moment, they would have all perished here. Though Revis was cold by nature, she felt justified in her resentment of this situation. Scathach's expression remained indifferent. Since he is my disciple, it's only natural for him to achieve this. Aren't you worried that an unexpected event might cause his downfall here? Even someone as emotionally detached as Revis was shocked by Scathach's ruthless teaching methods. If he falls in such a place, it only proves he was never more than this and I can just revive him. Scathach's tone remained extremely indifferent. You're a demon, even the Spartans can't compare to you. Thank you for the compliment, but I don't care what you or he think of me. I just need him to keep getting stronger to fulfill my wish. Scathach thought but didn't say the last part aloud, letting it echo only in her mind. On the other side, the exhausted Ryu was being supported by Ice as they walked toward the members of the Loki Familia. Amazing, brother. Tiona was the first to give a thumbs up. You saved us this time, especially the captain. Thank you. Tion, ever the captain's fangirl, expressed her gratitude. Well done. Even Reveria, usually cold towards Ryu, showed a slight smile. TCH tilde, this time, I'll concede you won. The werewolf bet, still following the classic Tsuneri template, wasn't cute at all despite being a silver-haired male werewolf. Lefia, on the other hand, didn't speak. She looked at Ryu with a conflicted expression. Though he was her rival in love, his face no longer seemed so detestable. Could it be that I'm in love with him? That's impossible. Yet Lefia, with her vivid imagination, began fantasizing about a scenario where she, Ryu, and Ice were together, living in harmony. Being a pure-hearted elf, her fantasies were limited to things like feeding each other in lap pillows, without even a kiss, let alone anything more intimate. Even so, Lefia's vivid imagination made her drool. 3 people together might not be so bad. As Lefia was lost in her daydreams. Young man, well done. It looks like I'm getting old and can start thinking about retirement, ha 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 tilde. Gareth laughed heartily, sitting cross-legged on the ground. Gareth, what are you talking about? It's far too early to think about retirement now. That's an order from the captain. Mention retirement again, and you'll be banned from drinking for a month, Finn suddenly said, pretending to be serious. Then just kill me instead. For a dwarf, going a month without drinking is a death sentence, Gareth grumbled. Dwarves have naturally loud voices, and even though Gareth didn't lower his volume on purpose, everyone heard him and burst into laughter. This laughter snapped Lefia out of her daydreams, and she looked at everyone, confused, with question marks practically popping over her head. After the laughter subsided, Finn put on a serious face and spoke to Ryu. Mr. Gudao, our Loki Familia owes you a great debt. As the leader of the group, Finn was adept at social interactions. His words quickly closed the distance between them. Ryu hesitated slightly, then detached himself from Ice's support and removed the magical mask from his face. This is my true face. My real name is Nguyen Ryu. What, you're from the east? Tiona exclaimed in surprise. Everyone else was equally shocked, except for the 3 leaders and Ice. Ice had already seen Ryu's true appearance, and the 3 leaders had long suspected it. Today merely confirmed their suspicions. I had important reasons for hiding my true face. I'm sorry for deceiving you all for so long. Also, I'm not from the east. I am from a country farther away than the country in the east. Ryu hesitated for a moment, then performed a traditional martial artist salute, full of ancient chivalric style. Finn observed everyone's reactions and smiled slightly. Thank you for your honesty. We're all adventurers here. It's normal for us to have secrets we don't want others to know. Since the captain didn't pursue the matter, the other members naturally didn't have anything to say. However, the sudden change from the western-faced Gudao to the eastern-faced Ryu was a bit disconcerting for some who weren't used to it. All right, let's head back. Everyone else is probably getting impatient. Finn clapped his hands to draw everyone's attention to himself and then announced loudly. They were supposed to deal with the spoils of battle, but the demonic transformation had completely absorbed the body of the demi-spirit, and then Ryu's noble phantasm had vaporized it. Aside from a giant mark on the ground, slowly recovering due to the dungeon's influence, nothing else remained. However, Ryu did gain considerable benefits. In addition to a 10-roll reward for eliminating the demonic transformation, he received a craft essence card from the demi-spirit. Moreover, having passed the first trial world, the system unlocked many permissions. One of these permissions allowed him to spend energy points to make natives similar to servants, enabling them to follow Ryu to Chaldea or other worlds. Of course, it's not to say that the Loki Familia got no benefits at all. Reaching a floor that no one else had was a significant honor. This intangible asset was invaluable, as the increased prestige of the Loki Familia would attract talented newcomers to join them and give them more influence in Orario. As a wealthy, powerful family, these intangible assets were probably what they valued most. As everyone helped each other out of the entrance to the 51st floor, the members of the Loki Familia guarding the 50th floor immediately surrounded them. We've conquered the 59th floor of the dungeon. Rejoice, everyone. With Finn's announcement, members of the Loki Familia, along with those from the Hephaestus Familia, erupted into cheers, turning the camp into a sea of joy. The loud cheers even startled birds from the distant trees. When the Loki Familia returned to the surface, news of their conquest of the 59th floor spread quickly. The entire labyrinth city was thrown into a frenzy. The Loki Familia accomplished a feat that even the once dominant Zeus and Hera Familias, who had slain the 3 great kings, had not achieved. The Loki Familia's prestige now rivaled that of the Freya Familia, home to Orario's strongest adventurer. While the Loki Familia members went to celebrate, Ryu, being an outsider, didn't join in the festivities and returned to his dormitory alone. When the clock struck midnight, the commotion brought about by the Loki Familia during the day seemed to have had no impact on the normal operations of this ancient labyrinth city. Looking in from the tall city walls, aside from the brightly lit pleasure street, the entire Orario had almost completely fallen asleep. At this moment, a figure appeared on the city wall. It was Nguyen Ryu himself. Almost simultaneously, another figure leapt onto the wall. Ryu looked at her golden hair, which shimmered even at night, and smiled. You came. Ice nodded slightly, her face showing signs of being deep in thought. Ryu immediately knew what was troubling her. Don't worry, we can come back again. Really? Ice's eyes lit up instantly. Of course, when have I ever lied to you? Ice thought for a moment and nodded. So, you agree? As the moment of truth arrived, a hint of unease flickered in Ryu's eyes. Fortunately, Ice was an honest child, and she nodded without hesitation. Ryu's heart leapt with joy. He immediately spent 100,000 energy points from the system in exchange for a D-rank servant contract. It wasn't that he was being stingy. Based on his assessment of Ice's attributes, her overall strength wouldn't exceed D rank, comparable to an ordinary heroic spirit. Exchanging for a higher level contract would be a waste. A completely blank card appeared in Ryu's hand. He looked at it and found nothing unusual. Just as he was about to form a contract with Ice, a mischievous thought occurred to him, and he began to recite solemnly. I hereby declare. Your body shall serve under me. My fate shall be your sword. Submit to the beckoning of the Holy Grail if you will submit to this will and this reason. Then answer. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO 37. Ryu recited a lengthy incantation, but unfortunately, there was no summoning circle lighting up, no heroic spirit descending from the sky, and not even any cheap special effects. All that was before him was Ice, tilting her head slightly, looking at him with a cute, bewildered expression. Ah, nostalgia. Ryu sighed inwardly and sent a request to Ice through the system. Ice was initially startled, perhaps surprised that someone could speak directly into her mind. She then nodded obediently and softly said, I am willing. With her response, the blank card in Ryu's hand instantly lit up with a resplendent rainbow glow. Ice, dressed in silver white half armor and holding the sword of despair, appeared vividly on the card. Name, Ice Wallenstein. Race, human, spirit, not activated. Class, saber. Alignment, lawful good. Growth potential, 5 stars. Rank, ordinary heroic spirit. Base attributes. Strength, 34.5, D+. Agility, 36.2, C. Endurance, 33.6, D+. Mana, 28.7, D. Note, the average attribute for ordinary humans, excluding mana, is 10. Below 10 is F, above 15 but below 20 is E, and so on. Luck, B+. Class skills. Magic resistance, B. Personal skills. Ariel's blessing. Noble phantasms. Blessing, X. Sword of despair, D. Ice has a 5-star growth potential. Ryu had looked it up. Growth potential ranged from 1 star at the lowest to 5 stars at the highest. A 5-star growth potential meant that, given enough time, she would almost inevitably grow into an epic level heroic spirit and might even reach the mythical level with sufficient opportunity. It made sense, considering who Ice's parents were. Her father was Wallenstein, a great hero from 1,000 years ago, and her mother was someone extraordinary, a spirit known as the Avatar of the Gods. With such bloodlines, Ice's achievements were destined to be out of reach for ordinary people. Even Belle Cornell, the protagonist of this world's original story, would not necessarily match Ice's achievements and talents if not for the author's favoritism. As for feeling jealous, that was out of the question. My kohai now belongs entirely to me. What's there to be jealous of? Ice's basic attributes were roughly as Ryu had estimated. Perhaps due to becoming a contract heroic spirit, her class had changed to one of the 3 knight classes, Saber. Her class skills included a B-level magic resistance, and most importantly, both Blessing and the Sword of Despair had become noble phantasms. Especially the noble phantasm Blessing. The improved version of Blessing that Ryu had, which was modified by Scathach, could only be used in this world and was ineffective in other worlds. However, Ice's Blessing, after being sublimated into a noble phantasm, could be used in other worlds. Although this noble phantasm had no offensive power, its effects surpassed any other noble phantasm. It no longer required the main god to update statuses and could independently guide the host's potential based on their experiences, continuously enhancing the host's overall attributes. It even included the development abilities Ice had previously chosen, such as Hunter and Abnormal Resistance. As Ice grew stronger, more new abilities would emerge. For example, Hunter allows for greater damage against non-human species such as beasts and phantasms. In simple terms, Blessing is equivalent to carrying a simplified solo leveling system. Ryu had been worried about how Ice would grow stronger in other worlds, but now it seemed her growth rate might not be any slower than his own. This was a treasure. Unable to contain himself, Ryu embraced Ice and planted a kiss on her smooth, tender cheek. Ice's face immediately turned crimson, but she neither stopped his actions nor pushed him away, seemingly giving tacit approval. Ryu felt a great sense of relief in his heart. It seemed the plan to nurture his kohai was progressing smoothly. Go back and prepare yourself properly. It's best to leave a message explaining that you'll be away for a while, otherwise, Loki will cause a huge commotion again. Ryu silently added in his mind that even if she left a message, Loki would still cause a huge commotion. Thinking of that troublesome goddess, Ice's face also turned expressionless. Loki, with tears streaming down her face, would be shouting, "Give me back my Ice." At this moment, the images in both their minds were almost synchronized. Try not to draw too much attention to yourself. Ryu couldn't help but feel a headache and rub his temples. Ice nodded, her eyes showing agreement. After finishing his instructions and agreeing to meet again here the next day before their departure, the two parted ways. Ryu returned to the Gudako Hotel to begin preparations for his departure. The operation of the hotel had now entered a stable phase. Moreover, occasions requiring Ryu to personally cook had become quite rare. With his increasing fame, a single cooking session by him could cost millions of valis, making it impossible for even top-tier families and guilds to frequently request his culinary services. To ensure the normal operation of the hotel, Ryu specifically groomed, guided, veteran female staff members like Mei, Ryu and Chloe to be capable of managing on their own. Although they were still far from Ryu's level, they had become competent enough to manage the Gudako Hotel. Aside from their innate talent, the strong physical coordination of these LV4 adventurers played a significant role. To expedite their training, Ryu taught them based on their strengths, assigning them only to the dishes they were best at. Chloe, the black-haired catgirl, excelled at seafood dishes. Seer specialized in desserts, and the lively, brown-haired catgirl Anya was surprisingly good at barbecue. Even Ryu, the ice-cold elf girl, excelled at making various drinks, showcasing the elves' natural affinity for nature and art. Due to their skill and fame, the dishes they prepared were much more affordable than those cooked by Ryu himself. While his dishes could easily cost millions of valis, their dishes ranged from tens of thousands to 100,000 valis, making them much more accessible. Coupled with their natural beauty, the Gudako Hotel saw an increase in business instead of a decline. However, the 6th floor of the Gudako Hotel, decorated like a heavenly palace, remained Ryu's private dining hall, reserved only for the most distinguished guests and only used when he was cooking. It wasn't used for banquets costing less than 10 million valis. Ryu cleverly employed a hunger marketing strategy, turning the Gudako Hotel into a membership-based establishment. From lowest to highest, the membership levels were bronze, silver, gold, and the highest, diamond. A bronze membership card required a cumulative spend of over 100,000 valis at the tavern, while silver required over 1 million valis. Crucially, these two levels did not grant access to the main dining area of the Gudako Hotel, only allowing dining in the 2nd floor and 3rd floor private rooms of the tavern. Only gold members had the privilege of entering the Gudako Hotel. Besides needing to spend 10 million valis, gold membership also required an evaluation to prove the cardholder had assets worth 100 million valis or equivalent status. However, even gold members couldn't enter the 6th floor, the Ryu Hall. As for the highest diamond level, it wasn't about how much one spent. It was awarded by the Gudako Hotel to the most valuable customers after an evaluation. So far, only 5 diamond cards have been issued. The 5 known cardholders are 2 major noble families, a guild, the head of the Merchants Alliance, and 1 card that Ryu had put into the black market auction through a series of channels. This kind of diamond level membership card is tied to the card, not the person. As long as the cardholder enters the Gudako Hotel, they can freely explore the 1st to 6th floors and enjoy a 20% discount. The most crucial benefit is that this diamond card allows for up to 100 million valis in overdraft spending. In other words, the card itself is equivalent to 100 million valis within the hotel. Additionally, under Ryu's manipulation, this card has become a symbol of status and prestige, only held by top-tier individuals. Following this marketing strategy combined with special advertising, the diamond card that entered the black market auction was sold for a staggering 5 billion valis. This not only earned Ryu a significant profit but also promoted the name of the Gudako Hotel worldwide. After all, it was in Orario, the center of such a world. In another world, such an effect would not have been as exaggerated. After all, nearly 95% of the gods from the lower world and 99% of the adventurers are concentrated in Orario, making its overall strength capable of overwhelming the entire world. A peaceful day arrived once again. This time, without alarming anyone, Ryu only informed his partner, Mia Grand. Gudao-kun, aren't you going to say goodbye to those girls? What should I do when they come looking for you? Mia Grand crossed her arms, her intimidating aura even more pronounced. There's a saying that the position you sit in naturally cultivates a corresponding aura, and Ryu now believed it. Compared to before the Gudako Hotel became successful, Mia Grand's aura had increased tenfold. Other than Ryu and the old-timers of the tavern, no one dared to call Mamma Mia anymore. They all addressed her as Madam. It's just a couple of months of travel, not like I'm not coming back. This was exactly what made Ryu almost leave without saying goodbye. He had witnessed how terrifying love-struck young girls could be. Given his reputation in the Gudako Hotel, except for a few, there was nothing he couldn't get if he wanted it. Although organizing something like an unrestricted gathering or a grand feast might be a bit much, just beckoning would be enough to have those admiring girls voluntarily climb into his bed. The reason he didn't act was not because he was less than a beast. It's just that, Transmigrator Goblin Rule, getting aroused by a bunch of nameless background characters was too lame. Go on, remember to come back early. Mia Grand waved her hand as if shooing him away, but her slightly reddened eyes and concerned look betrayed her true feelings. Then I'll be off, take care. Ryu sighed and resolutely turned to leave. He didn't know that a pair of eyes had been watching him the whole time, lingering until his figure completely disappeared into the morning mist. When Ryu arrived at the city wall, Ice, fully armed, was already waiting there. Seeing Ice empty-handed, Ryu couldn't help but be surprised. He had seen some girls who would take a bunch of cosmetics just for a trip, and even more for a vacation. They'd carry a whole suitcase. It was the first time he'd seen someone like Ice, so lightly packed. Well, anyway, my Kohai is naturally beautiful. She doesn't need any cosmetics. Ryu thought happily. Is there something wrong with me? Perhaps Ryu's gaze caught Ice's attention, and the girl tilted her head adorably. No, nothing, let's hurry, or it will be a big deal if your familia finds out. Ryu quickly changed the subject. Ice nodded obediently. Thus, their figures disappeared into the morning light. As for the impact their elopement-like action would have on the entire Orario, no one could tell. However, the people of Orario are unaware that beneath this facade of peace lies a storm capable of sweeping across the entire world. In a mysterious residence somewhere in Orario, from the outside, it looks like an ordinary mansion. But once you step inside and cross the stone gate of the courtyard, it's as if you have entered another world. The interior is styled like an ancient Greek temple, made entirely of stone, with various heroic and mythological reliefs everywhere, and sculptures of the Olympian gods lined up on both sides. A goddess with purple hair and bright eyes sits on the throne, and in front of her kneel 12 figures on one knee. They are either slender, athletic, or petite, and each possesses beauty comparable to a goddess. On their earlobes hang 12 golden earrings symbolizing the 12 zodiac signs. Your Highness, we have determined the target's movement patterns. The only one who has been by his side for a long time is a single LV7 adventurer, who is not a concern. An elf girl with an earring in the shape of a centaur aiming a bow at the sky, carrying a huge golden bow as tall as a person, said in a deep voice. In her words, the strongest warrior of Orario, Otter, seemed like a small fry who could be dealt with easily. They have this confidence because each of them exudes an aura no less than that of Otter, the so-called final weapon of Orario and the only LV7. Among them, 2 and a pair of twins have an aura that far surpasses Otter's. But the most terrifying is the goddess with purple hair and bright eyes sitting on the throne. Such a terrifying force, capable of overturning all of Orario single-handedly, has remained unknown. No rush, Tilda, it's time to reap some interest after using our Olympian god's most important chess piece for so long. Athena elegantly took a sip from a golden, gem-encrusted wine glass. This time, we will not only retrieve this chess piece but also make the entire Asgardian pantheon pay the price. A confident smile appeared on her face, perfectly combining heroism and beauty. Yes, Your Highness, your will is our mission. The 12 voices echoed uniformly in the resplendent temple as if heralding a massive storm about to sweep across Orario. At the edge of time-space in Chaldea, a colorful beam of light lit up, and 3 figures appeared in the center of the teleportation array. So tired, I can finally get some rest. Back in his independent base, Ryu couldn't help but let out a big yawn. A qualified warrior should never let their guard down, no matter where they are, came a cold voice from beside him. It was Scathach. Being stared at by those cold crimson eyes, Ryu couldn't help but feel immense pressure. However, remembering Scathach's obvious deliberate absence during the final battle, a surge of anger welled up in his heart. Does it matter? This is Chaldea at the end of time-space, safety is guaranteed. Staying alert in your own home is just exhausting. With an unknown surge of courage, Ryu argued. Is that so, Tilda? So that's what you think? Scathach slightly frowned but said nothing more, turning and leaving the teleportation room. Geez, Tilda, what a weirdo. Ryu tried to dispel the unpleasant thoughts from his mind and then smiled at Ice, who was quietly standing by as an observer. Kohai, let me show you to your room. Ice nodded obediently. My Kohai is so well behaved. Tilda. Ryu's mood lightened a bit as he led Ice to the living quarters. Due to its layout modeled after the Chaldea in the FGO mobile game, the decor here is filled with a futuristic sci-fi vibe. This was very novel to Ice, who came from a medieval background, and she couldn't help but look around curiously. Seeing this, Ryu slowed his pace and started introducing the place as they walked. The place we just came out of is the teleportation room, which can send us to other worlds. Now we're passing by the training ground, which can simulate various environments and even any enemies we've encountered before. Any injuries sustained inside, including fatal ones, can be instantly healed. Ryu pointed to a large black iron door as he explained. Ice's eyes lit up as she looked at the door, the training ground piquing her interest. I'm not too sure about the specifics, something about placing the real body in a parallel space and then simulating an identical copy on the spot. Ryu was enthusiastically explaining when he noticed Ice staring intently at the training ground door. Ryu couldn't help but pat Ice on the head. Enduring the itch in his nose, the two of them walked and toured around. Unknowingly, they arrived at a spacious hall with more than a dozen tables in the center. This is the dining hall. That big round ball in the center, if you place your hand on it, you can change the background layout of the dining hall for your thoughts. You can either cook for yourself or choose to have the dining hall cook automatically. After passing through the dining hall, the two soon arrived at the residential area, where 2 rows of doors were neatly arranged. There were nameplates beside the doors, and apart from the first 2 rooms occupied by Ryu and Scathach, the other nameplates were blank. Ryu led Ice to the door of an empty room next to his and pointed to the blank nameplate, saying, place your hand on the nameplate and imagine the decoration layout of your room. Once your name appears on the nameplate, it means the space inside has been replaced. Give it a try. Without waiting for a response, Ryu took Ice's small hand and placed it on the nameplate. Ice's cheeks flushed with a faint blush, but she did not pull her hand away from his grasp, letting him guide her. Soon, a flash of light passed, and the name Ice Wallenstein appeared on the blank nameplate. The door then swung open with a swish. Curiously, Ryu peeked inside, only to find that Ice's room was not only small but also had very few items and furniture. It had just the essentials: a bed, a set of tables and chairs, and a wardrobe. Its decoration style was reminiscent of her room in the Loki Familia. This girl is too simple. Ryu shook his head helplessly but respected her choice. If you want to change the layout or decoration, just place your hand on the nameplate again and use your thoughts to control it, Ryu reminded her, still a bit worried. No, this is fine, Ice said, looking at the familiar room with a touch of warmth in her eyes. Alright, as long as you're happy. My room is right next door, so just come to me if you need anything, Ryu said with a hint of helplessness. Good night, Ice said and walked straight into her room, closing the door behind her, shutting out the words he still had to say. Good night, Ryu said with a bitter smile to the closed door, then turned and went into his room. He threw his tired body onto the bed and soon fell into a deep sleep. Just as Ryu was sleeping soundly, he suddenly felt a strong killing intent approaching. Without even opening his eyes, his body reacted instinctively, rolling off the bed. Who am I? Where am I? Who hit me? Ryu was forcibly awakened, his mind still in a daze. When he looked up at his bed, there, a crimson magic spear was impaled. If he had been a bit slower, it would have pierced his throat. Wait a minute, aren't I in Chaldea? Why am I being attacked, and why does this spear look so familiar? Awake? It seems I need to correct you. Your alertness is barely adequate. Scathach's cold voice came from the other side of the bed. What exactly are you trying to do? Nearly being stabbed to death for no reason, combined with his morning grumpiness, Ryu completely ignored the difference in their strength and was furious. You have been resting for 8 hours since you returned to your room. That time is enough to recover your physical and mental strength. Now it's my turn to train you. Ryu swore he didn't see wrong. When Scathach said the last sentence, although her expression remained cold and proud, a clear hint of excitement flashed in her eyes. Alright, if you're a man, stop dawdling. Didn't you say you wanted to become my best disciple? Just talking isn't enough, Scathach said, and with a wave of her delicate hand, the magic spear embedded in the bed was pulled back into her hand as if by an invisible string. Here I come. Scathach shouted, thrusting with a speed that was just fast enough for him to dodge. Wait, at least let me get dressed. Ryu, not caring about his posture, messily dodged Scathach's thrust. To be a qualified warrior, you must be able to enter combat at any moment. Moreover, do you think the enemy will wait for you to get dressed? Scathach said as she launched another free-strike combo. Ryu immediately gave up on getting dressed. Wearing only a pair of boxers, he quickly took out the elemental fury from his storage space and put it on his hands, then blocked Scathach's three strikes left and right. What kind of teacher are you? I'm going to leave the school. Ryu roared in anger. Too late. Since you became my disciple, you either earn my acknowledgement or you die by my hand. There is no second path. Scathach continued to thrust her magical spear relentlessly, the crimson spearhead raining down on him like a bloody storm. You Spartan teacher. Ryu barely managed to fend off the spear rain with all his might. Spartan? Their education method was taught by me. Perhaps getting more excited as the fight went on, a hint of bloodlust appeared on Scathach's face. Fukoda. Ryu let out a wail that echoed throughout all of Chaldea. In the room next door, Ice was just putting on her gear, preparing to head to the training grounds. Hearing the sounds of battle and Ryu's cries of despair from the adjacent room, a hint of envy flashed in her eyes. I envy Senpei, being personally trained by Shisho. I can't fall behind. This was the truest thought in the heart of Ice Wallenstein, who was single-mindedly focused on becoming stronger. One had to admit that Scathach's teaching methods were extremely rough and unreasonable, but they were incredibly effective. She seemed to have an almost supernatural understanding of Ryu's body, able to detect even the slightest changes, thereby pushing his physical limits and allowing him to continuously break through with the help of his noble phantasms. In just one day, Ryu's basic attributes saw a slight increase. Of course, the price was that Ryu was practically trained to the point of being unable to move, not even a single finger, and had to be carried back to his room by Ice. And this was just the beginning. For the entire following week, Ryu lived in a state of constant torment. Only when Scathach saw that his body and spirit were truly exhausted did she let him go and turn to train Ice, who was eagerly waiting for her turn. Scathach's training of Ice, however, was extremely measured, appearing to be a perfectly normal teacher-student interaction. Unable to hold back, Ryu questioned her, only to be shut down by Scathach with one sentence. Because you're a man, if you cut off what's below, I can be gentler with you too, how about that? When she said this, she kept glancing at his lower half, making Ryu's hair stand on end. Under Scathach's Spartan-style training, within just a week, all of Ryu's basic attributes broke through 25 points, reaching D. Several of his innate skills also saw significant improvement. Attributes were one thing, but the key was in combat. Previously, Ryu had never been systematically trained by anyone and would rely on his high defense and strong recovery to tough it out, fighting with a do-or-die mentality. This fighting style was effective against monsters but less so against martial arts experts. They could easily deliver a fatal blow without waiting for you to slowly drag them down. Although Scathach's methods were harsh, she taught him the most suitable combat style for him in the shortest time. A defensive counterattack style focused on defense and dodging vital attacks. With Ryu's noble phantasms and mystic codes, as long as he could drag the fight into a prolonged battle, not to mention enemies of the same level, even those a level higher would lose once they were dragged into a prolonged battle, allowing Ryu to continuously accumulate mana. Scathach's methods might have been cruel, but they were incredibly effective in teaching her disciples, benefiting Ryu greatly. However, Ryu really couldn't endure this Spartan-style education. Originally planning to take a month off in Chaldea, he now had to end his plan early. When Ryu found Scathach and explained his intentions, Scathach's eyes were a bit strange. You say you want to go to another world? P.S. Next chapter is Gacha time. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 38. Ryu sighed. You feel regretful that the sandbag wanted to run away, right? You must feel regretful, right? Well, it's fine. No matter how much training and guidance one receives, without experiencing life and death combat, it's all just for show. Besides, Ice also needs to sharpen herself. Scathach valued her rare female disciple, Ice, very much. It wasn't just because Ice would always actively request her training, but also because of the determination Ice showed to become stronger, willing to give her all, which moved Scathach deeply. With the plan set, Ryu began to prepare. Although Chaldea did not give a specific time limit, based on his observations, given the speed of the magical corruption, it was best not to exceed 1 month. After Ryu passed the first trial-like quest, the system gradually unlocked more functions while also adding some restrictions. The most significant impact on him was that although he could bring any number of people into the quest world, anyone of a higher level than him would enter in a dimensionally isolated manner. This meant they could only follow him as spectators. The only remedy the system provided was that he would have 3 command spells per world, allowing them to act a total of 3 times for no more than 1 minute each time. This restriction completely prevented him from taking a strong, obedient servant to easily clear quests, thus avoiding shortcuts. Ryu was currently at the servant level. Forget about Scathach, even Ice could only assist him with command spells. This was truly. Initially, he had planned to team up with his cute and obedient Kohai to dominate the next quest world. But now, At this moment, Ryu noticed a message from the system. It turned out that aside from Ryu himself, any contracted servant could use a teleportation array to enter the worlds corrupted by magical anomalies and carry out eradication. That made sense. After the initial phase, through drawing cards and forming contracts, the number of Chaldees servants would increase. If only he could go to eradicate the magical anomalies, how inefficient would that be? Considering the number of corrupted worlds had already reached hundreds or thousands, relying on him alone would be endless. Although servants could freely choose which corrupted world to enter, Ryu, as the sole master, had significant authority. Only he could contract with the native inhabitants of the quest world, turning them into servants. He was also the only one who could use the system's exchange shop at any time and place. This was very much in line with the definition of a master in FGO, a support role in the early stages that could tear apart Solomon by the end. Sarcasm tilde. The contracting process aside, the latter privilege made Ryu a mobile supply base. Don't underestimate this privilege. In the Danmachi world, abbreviated as, is it wrong to try to pick up girls in a dungeon? This privilege repeatedly saved Ryu from danger and allowed him to grow rapidly. Moreover, in the Danmachi world, where all kinds of potions were readily available, this privilege's value would be even more apparent in apocalyptic worlds where even food might be scarce. Out of a sense of responsibility to his contracted servants, the system stipulated that without the master's guidance, the difficulty and corruption rate of the quest world must be lower than the servant's level by 1 grade. If the number of servants was greater than 1, the highest level would be the benchmark, and the difficulty must be 2 levels lower. This regulation allowed his servants to achieve overwhelming victories, which was excellent. Although somewhat reluctant, Ryu decided to let Ice enter the quest world on her own, as following him would only slow down her progress. Despite the system's guarantee of reduced difficulty, Ice was naturally clumsy and kind-hearted. Therefore, Ryu decided to do a 10 draw, hoping to get a servant summoning card to summon a servant to accompany Ice, so they could look out for each other. After eradicating the magical anomalies in the Danmachi world, Ryu obtained a precious 10 draw opportunity. To maximize the effect of this valuable opportunity, he directly opened the system shop, turned to a particular page, hesitated slightly, and spent 100,000 energy points to exchange for a potion. You should know that killing the demi-spirit and the rewards from the magical corruption only totaled 300,000 energy points. Spending 1/3 of that in one go was quite significant. Moreover, the effect of this potion lasted only a mere 10 seconds. It was an outrageous rip-off. But Ryu believed it was worth it because this potion could increase his luck. This potion, called the Advanced Luck Potion, could raise the user's luck level by 3 grades within 10 seconds. It was practically a must-have for card draws, star upgrades, and forging, an absolute blessing for those with poor luck and a rocket ticket to the goddess of luck embrace. It was a divine tool that could elevate an unluck Ryu to surpass RNGSUs and become a god of luck. Such a heavenly potion only cost 998, 100,000. Looking at the transparent bottle containing the liquid that emitted a rainbow-colored glow, Ryu solemnly pulled out the cork. Whether he would end up eating dirt or a 5A steak depended on this gamble. Bottoms up. Ryu tilted his head back and drank the potion in one go. At the same time, he quickly opened the 10 draw interface of the system and started the summoning. Despite being fully prepared, he couldn't help but feel anxious. After all, even the luckiest person couldn't always get a 5-star. Luck was a mysterious thing. As long as it wasn't 100%, there was always a chance of failure. Oh no, I think I forgot to burn incense and bathe. Would that lower my luck? Will I fail this time? As he watched the summoning circle before him, Ryu suddenly thought of an important issue, and his face turned pale with shock. Unfortunately, the system wouldn't allow him to exit and restart. A flash of white light passed, and the first reward appeared. It was a feather constantly burning with flames. Phoenix feather. Judging by its appearance and the faint terrifying magical power it emitted, Ryu could tell at a glance that it wasn't some nominal material but the real deal. Before he could think further, the system spat out 4 more rewards in succession. Thanks to the luck potion, even the energy points drawn were no less than 10,000 each, and the single potion drawn was worth exactly 10,000 points. But why didn't he draw a servant card? Ding. Just as Ryu was feeling anxious, the summoning circle suddenly lit up with a golden light. Finally, a result. Ryu's eyes were fixed on the center of the summoning circle, unblinking. A golden card appeared in the center of the circle. From the symbol, it was a caster card, though who it was remained to be seen. Next, a slender and petite figure emerged from the circle. Her noble purple hair was tied into a single ponytail, cascading down to her waist. She wore a princess's golden crown and a robe as light as feathers, along with mismatched gloves and stockings on her delicate hands and long legs. Her exquisite face was even more beautiful than an elf's, with pointed ears and large, expressive purple eyes, making her look every bit like an elven princess. I am servant caster Medea, Lily. Please take good care of me. Her soft voice was like a feather gently tickling the heart, making one feel a pleasant itch. The girl walked out of the summoning circle, stood in front of him, and looked up at him like an obedient little lamb. Are you my master? Thump thump. Ryu felt as if his heart skipped a few beats. He had thought that Ice perfectly embodied the trait of exquisite, but today he saw another girl whose beauty was equally exquisite. He couldn't believe he had summoned caster. This was the so-called proof of luck for early-stage players, a caster more precious than some 5-star servants. The advanced luck potion was indeed powerful. And Caster Lily was no mere pretty face. Trained by the goddess of magic, Hecate, she excelled in ancient magic. Coupled with a high-speed divine words skill, she could cast ancient high-level spells as quickly as minor ones. Moreover, while Caster might not excel in offensive magic, her explosive healing abilities were incredibly strong. To Ryu's team, which lacked a healer, she was indispensable. Now, with just a long-range specialist missing, the team would be ready for dungeon raids, he thought happily. I am your master. You can call me Ryu, Medea-chan. Looking at the obedient Caster before him, Ryu felt his heart, which had been tormented by scathach, finally healed. Instinctively, he reached out to pat Caster's head. Ma Master Tilda. Medea's cheeks turned a deep shade of red, her face showing extreme shyness, yet she didn't resist his touch. Finally, a soft girl in the team. Ryu felt tears of joy well up in his heart. While Ice was also nice and gentle, she was naturally dull, with little change in expression, completely different from Caster. As Ryu teased Caster, the summoning circle continued to be busy, spitting out 3 more rewards. Perhaps due to summoning Caster, Ryu's luck seemed to soar. After all, Caster's luck stat was on par with Gilgamesh. The circle first gave 2 energy points and a piece of purple equipment. Then, rainbow-colored light began to shine, signaling another significant reward. The familiar rainbow light, the familiar golden card, the familiar special effects. This is a sign of limited servant. Ryu was ecstatic. In his excitement. Smooch. He kissed Caster on the cheek. So tender and smooth, just like silken tofu. Ah, master, you. Before Ryu could savor the moment, Caster pushed him away. He awkwardly scratched the back of his head and was about to apologize when the circle's special effects concluded. A dazzling figure appeared in the summoning circle. Just as he was about to greet the new servant, a large amount of black magical mist suddenly emerged from behind Caster. Master, you impure, perverted, shameless. With a creepy smile on her face, Caster pulled out a bizarrely shaped, curved dagger from who knows where and lunged at Ryu. Swish. Ryu was startled and quickly dodged to the side. What are you doing, Medea-chan? Are you trying to murder your master? Ryu awkwardly dodged as Medea, now completely blackened, wildly thrust the dagger at him. Master is an enemy of all women. You must be eliminated. With a crazed smile on her face, Medea swung the dagger, aiming not just at Ryu's vital points but frequently targeting a certain unspeakable area. As they scuffled, a proud yet slightly shy voice rang out. The goddess Ishtar, summoned at your request. I am the goddess of beauty who governs Venus, as well as fertility, war, and destruction. Tremble and worship me. Her long hair, as dark as the night, cascaded down her back, and her crimson eyes were more magnificent than the finest gems. A faint mischievous smile played on her stunningly beautiful face. On her head was a splendid, luxurious crown, but her attire was extremely revealing, akin to a bikini, styled in Mesopotamian ceremonial fashion and adorned with gold ornaments. She wore a single blue war boot resembling a stocking on her right foot, and improbably, a pair of golden high heels. Her vast expanse of snow-white skin was exposed to the air, and she seemed to revel in attracting attention, confidently displaying her unparalleled charm. The goddess, exuding an air of opulence, was seated on a massive bow, several times larger than a human, resembling both a bow and a sailboat. Astonishingly, the giant bow floated in midair without any visible support. This was Ishtar, the most famous goddess of Venus in Mesopotamian mythology. Her appearance closely resembled a certain well-known female character from Type Moon's Nasuverse, Rin Tasaka, earning her the nickname Ishtar Rin. Despite Ishtar's grand entrance, no one paid her any attention, which annoyed the goddess who was accustomed to being the center of attention. However, when she noticed the dramatic scene of a wronged maiden delivering a bloody end to a scumbag, her crimson eyes narrowed slightly, and a teasing, mischievous smile appeared on her face. You two seem to be having fun. Where do you see that we're having fun? Ryu glanced back and immediately noticed the goddess in midair. Seeing the goddess's expression, which seemed to say, your melodramatic performance is amusing, keep entertaining me. He thought to himself. This woman is a devil. With just one look, he saw through her true nature. However, Ryu had no time to worry about these things. Castor had already raised her dagger high, preparing to bring it down with force. Ryu had no choice but to grab Castor's wrist in an attempt to wrest the dagger from her. To his surprise, a tremendous force surged through her, making it difficult for him to hold onto her wrist, let alone snatch the dagger. Are you really a Castor and not a berserker? Ryu wanted to ask, but Castor, with her blackened expression, kept muttering, divine punishment for the scum. Stab you, kill you, burn you. Ryu felt like crying. What grudge do you have against me, young lady, to be so ruthless? It was just a kiss on the cheek, was that necessary? Ryu swore that in the future, unless the affection level was high enough, he wouldn't kiss anyone on the cheek. At most, he'd settle for a head pat. Come over here and help already. Ryu's irritation grew as he watched Ishtar leisurely hovering in midair, enjoying the show. Sigh tilde so troublesome. The goddess examined her fingernails against the light, then, as if struck by a sudden thought, snapped her fingers. Why not just let her kill you? I have a good relationship with Ereshkigal. I can just revive you later. Ishtar spread her left hand, smacked it with her right, and wore an expression of sudden realization. Ryu nearly had a heart attack from anger. While he struggled against Castor, with Ishtar watching and smiling like an amused bystander, a dazzling rainbow-like light burst from the summoning circle, even more spectacular than Ishtar's entrance. The kaleidoscopic light swirled around the circle in a frenzy, seemingly unable to stop. Huh? What's this? It looks valuable. Ishtar leaned in curiously to look at the summoning circle. The magnificent display seemed to snap Castor out of her trance, her purple eyes regaining clarity. Huh? Where am I? What was I doing? Castor looked at the dagger in her hand with a puzzled expression. Nothing, don't worry about it. Ryu felt exhausted, both mentally and physically. If it weren't for the rare treasure emerging from the summoning circle, he would have preferred to go back to his room and sleep. After the vibrant display of rainbow lights, the circle was filled with flashes of lightning and thunder, captivating the trio's attention. Finally, a card appeared within the circle. Bronze. WTF. Such grand special effects for a one-star card? Ryu was on the verge of losing it. You don't seem to want it much. Why not offer it to me? I'll graciously accept it. Ishtar Rin suggested from midair. Ryu instinctively looked over. Despite Ishtar's face showing an expression of lucky you, Ryu keenly noticed her occasionally stealing glances at the bronze card in the center of the circle, her eyes betraying a hint of greed unbefitting a goddess. Something's up. Ryu's mind cleared instantly. Even Castor beside him had a cautious look on her face. I feel a tremendous amount of magic within this card. You little girl, you ruined this goddess's plan. Ishtar, her scheme exposed, was both embarrassed and angry. Fine, play on your own. This goddess is leaving, HMPH. With that, Ishtar flew away aboard her celestial vessel, Mana, sticking her tongue out at him like a pouting child before departing. Ryu couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. He then turned his attention to the card. With a wave of his hand, the card obediently flew into his grasp. The back of the card bore the assassin emblem, while the front depicted the famous one-star warrior from the FGO mobile game, the nameless samurai, Sasaki Kojira. It's just a one-star card, right? Ryu laughed bitterly, but Ishtar's behavior suggested otherwise. Upon closer inspection, Ryu noticed the differences. The intricate patterns aside, the card shimmered like a gemstone under the light. Detected descent card. Equip it? Ryu was puzzled, but the system, in its usual considerate manner, explained. This was one of the rarest summoning cards with only a 1% drop rate. Jackpot. Although Ryu still wasn't clear on what a descent card was, the name alone sounded incredibly impressive. Medea-chan, you're my lucky star. Ryu turned his excited gaze towards Castor, only to find her on high alert, clutching a strange, curvy dagger tightly in her small hand. Don't get excited. Ryu chuckled awkwardly. At that moment, the system provided information on the descent card. A descent card allows a heroic spirit's essence to descend upon Ryu, transforming him directly into that heroic spirit. The card he had obtained would let him become the legendary swordsman, Sasaki Kojira, with access to all his skills, including his noble phantasm. Same concept with Fate, Kaleid Liner Prisma Ilia. Although the system had time limitations for transformations, it was still the true form of a heroic spirit, not just a servant formed from magical energy, but the real heroic spirit itself. For Ryu, who had just stepped into the servant tier, using the descent card would dramatically boost his power. For instance, Sasaki Kojira's agility was ranked A+, nearly the pinnacle for heroic spirits, just shy of the X rank. Coupled with C-rank strength, even basic attacks would be enough to effortlessly defeat the demonic mutations he encountered in the world of Danmachi. There would be no need for Ryu to painfully gather magical energy through his noble phantasm. It was excruciating, like tearing his body apart and piecing it back together repeatedly, a torment worse than death. Thus, the 10-pull summoning came to a perfect conclusion. 100,000 potions, truly worth every bit. Ryu was elated, having gained a rare material, a piece of purple female armor, 1 4-star card, 1 5-star card, and a descent card. A bountiful harvest. A bountiful harvest indeed. It was worth all the effort to single-handedly defeat the demonic mutation. However, thinking of the recently summoned Ishtar, the little devil, and Castor Lily, who would go dark and stab people with her dagger at the slightest provocation, Ryu felt a headache coming on. Such a blissful dilemma. After gathering everyone for brief introductions, Ryu announced the plan for the next day. Ryu, Medea Lily, and Ishtar would form one team, while Ice and Scathach would form another, each team entering a different dungeon world. Later, they had a small gathering in the canteen. Despite being fully automated, the food was surprisingly good. Though it lacked heart and soul, the dishes were crafted with extreme precision. To put it simply, a real chef might score 90+ on the same dish, while the restaurant's machine would consistently score 100. A chef might exceed 100 on a good day, but the machine was fixed. Which was better? Of course, it depends on preference, but not really. Cooking isn't an exam. It needs that variability to surprise and delight. Even the finest ingredients would become dull if they were always the same. Ryu decided that whenever he had the time, he would cook himself. After the small gathering, he asked Ice to stay behind and gave her the newly acquired female light armor. Her current silver white light armor was decent, but it couldn't compare to the system's purple gear with additional special skills. The next day, everyone gathered in the teleportation chamber, ready to embark on a new journey. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 39. Just as Ryu stepped onto the teleportation array, the system suddenly popped up. Host Noble Phantasm has met the requirements for advancement. Do you want to activate the Noble Phantasm Trial Dungeon? Fate Apocrypha? Fate Apocrypha. Its original author, known as Yuichiro Higashi, is quite famous. Fate Apocrypha, to put it simply, is an alternate Holy Grail war in the Fate series, essentially a parallel world. It mainly tells the story of the Igmillennia Magus family's patriarch who, with the help of the German army during World War II, seized the Holy Grail, setting off a chaotic battle involving 14 heroic spirits, divided into red and black factions. Seeing the name Fate Apocrypha, Ryu immediately decided to choose it. As for the reason, anyone who has seen this work, whether they are a fan of the Fate series or not, would make the same choice. You idiotically charming homunculus, let go of Jeanne d'Arc and let me take over. Moreover, this is the legendary Noble Phantasm Dungeon trial. When Ryu had just entered the world of Danmachi, the thing that helped him the most was undoubtedly the Noble Phantasm, Crying Warmonger. Although he managed to raise this Noble Phantasm to B+ rank during the final battle, it hadn't reached Spartacus's original height, which always left him a bit regretful. Now, the system thoughtfully arranged a dungeon that could advance this Noble Phantasm. Naturally, Ryu chose yes without hesitation. On the other side, Ice and Scathach also chose to enter a world corrupted by demonic mutations. Cold, trembling. That was Ice's first sensation upon regaining control of her body. She bolted upright, scanning her surroundings warily, her hand already on her sword's hilt. Ice quickly noticed Scathach nearby, who was sitting on the floor in a relaxed, almost casual manner, contrasting sharply with Ice's alert stance. Seeing Ice's series of movements upon waking, Scathach's eyes showed a hint of approval. Ice quietly observed her surroundings. It seemed like they were in a moving iron cell. Besides her and Scathach, a few others lay scattered on the cold floor. At that moment, a man with a scarred face suddenly sat up, pulled out a cigar, lit it, and exhaled a smoke ring in one smooth motion. Facing Ice and Scathach's indifferent expressions, the scar-faced man spoke. Not bad, you two are the most competent among this batch. Suddenly, the scar-faced man's cigar fell to the ground as if he had been shocked. How did you wake up before me? On the other side, as Ryu chose, yes, the white light of the teleportation array immediately lit up in front of him. Sorry, Sieg, but your wife is mine now. You can go live happily ever after with Astolfo. In the instant of teleportation, he silently vowed. Ryu felt his vision blur, and he suddenly found himself in a chilling underground chamber. Under his feet was a heroic spirit summoning magic circle, still faintly glowing red. In front of him stood a stern-faced middle-aged man in a suit, though his eyes seemed somewhat vacant. Feeling the inexplicable iron sword in his hand and the faint magical connection with the middle-aged man, Ryu instantly understood that he had been summoned as a servant. The middle-aged man raised his right hand, revealing the command seals on the back of his hand, just as he was about to speak. Slash. A fierce gleam flashed in Ryu's eyes. Without a word, he slashed the sword across the middle-aged man's neck. A flash of white light, followed by a fountain of blood spurting skyward. The middle-aged man's head fell to the floor with a thud, his expression frozen in the final moment, full of confusion and bewilderment. Seems like I should say, rebellion against the oppressor? Ryu mocked, looking at the middle-aged man who died with his eyes wide open. The moment the middle-aged man revealed his command seals, his fate was sealed. There was no way Ryu would let anyone control his destiny, especially since that someone was still being controlled by someone else's poison. I need to leave immediately. This is probably where Amakusa Shuru and Semiramis are poisoning the magus sent by the Mages Association to summon servants through them. Amakusa and Semiramis are probably busy manipulating the other poisoned magus to summon more servants. If they find out I've broken free, it won't be good. Ryu's gaze swept the room and landed on a large mirror hanging on the basement wall. In the mirror, a giant over 2 meters tall, built like a small mountain, appeared. With massive muscles like limestone boulders and his body covered in various iron restraints, the square-faced giant smile was still incredibly unsettling. Isn't this Spartacus? I've turned into Spartacus. Although he was somewhat prepared, Ryu still couldn't help but feel a shock and quickly checked the system. After reading the system information, he breathed a sigh of relief. It turned out this was just an external appearance, like a shell, making him look like Spartacus on the outside, but he remained himself inside. His situation was very similar to Jeanne d'Arc, who was herself a shell, with a girl named Letitia inside. The difference was that Jean was in control, while Letitia could only perceive the outside world through Jean but couldn't control the body. Ryu had completely replaced Spartacus, controlling the body with Spartacus's exterior. Moreover, he could switch back to his true form at any time. Though ugly, this effectively gave him an additional layer of identity-concealing, combat-capable servant skin. In this perilous Holy Grail war, this function was incredibly valuable. The system is amazing. So, this is the true meaning of the Noble Phantasm trial, to let me replace Spartacus and win this Holy Grail war. Anyway, I need to get out of here first. With that thought, Ryu had an epiphany and suddenly displayed a crazed expression, shouting, oppressors. Dictators, I smell the scent of dictators. Punish the dictators with divine retribution. Boom. Ryu blasted out of the basement, charging through like a heavy tank. His direction was towards Trifas, a city in Romania controlled by the Igmillennia family. Thud, thud, thud. As the earthquake-like footsteps gradually faded, a few seconds later, a dark-skinned young man in priest robes appeared at the basement door, accompanied by a decadent-looking beauty in a black, luxurious dress. Oh my Tilda Master, it seems your plan isn't going smoothly from the start. The decadent beauty spoke, her voice dripping with venom like a snake. The path ahead is full of thorns, and I am mentally prepared. No one can stop me from saving all of humanity. For anyone else, these words would sound like adolescent delusions, but the dark-skinned, white-haired youth's eyes were filled with a will stronger than steel. This was Amakusa Shuru Tokisada, a young man dedicated to the salvation of all humanity, a paragon of sainthood. Standing beside him was, of course, the Empress of ancient Assyria, the world's oldest poisoner, Semiramis. Do you need me to pursue him, Master? Semiramis's dark eyes gleamed. No need, just send your familiars to follow him. Right now, the priority is to summon the other servants. I can already sense it, the Black faction has summoned their remaining 4 servants, and we're already behind. Amakusa Shuru ordered decisively. Understood, Master. Though Semiramis exuded an air of decadence, she rarely disobeyed Amakusa's orders. Semiramis placed her finger on her temple, and an invisible thought immediately spread out. In the distant fountain square, hundreds of pigeons seemed to receive a command and suddenly took flight in unison, heading in the direction where Ryu had fled. Ryu was running towards the outskirts of the city when he suddenly heard the faint sound of wings flapping behind him, and he immediately understood. It must be the Empress who summoned them. In myth and legend, the Empress was raised by a flock of pigeons. Leveraging this legend, Semiramis could easily command pigeons without using any magical power. Hey Tilda, do you need this goddess to step in? A playful, teasing voice sounded in his ear. The owner of this voice was naturally Ishtar, who had entered this world with him. After entering this world, she and Medea Lily had completely entered a dimensional isolation state, and almost no one except Ryu, who possessed the system, could see them. It's just a bunch of pigeons. There's no need for you to step in personally. Ryu refused without hesitation. Shay tilde so boring. Then this goddess will first go wander around the world. After saying that, Ishtar sitting on the heavenly boat waved at him and then directly flew up high, clearly ready to goof off. Hey, if you leave me here, what if I encounter danger? Medea-chan doesn't know any offensive spells. Ryu shouted urgently. Lady Ishtar, I think it would be better to stay by master's side, Medea weakly advised from the side. HMPH tilde. Who am I? I am the unparalleled goddess Ishtar. Even if I fly to the moon, the entire earth is still within my attack range. As for communication, don't you know that the command seals on your hand come with a telepathic function? So, what difference does it make whether I stay by your side? Ishtar said haughtily. Ryu then remembered that the person before him was a big shot who could use Venus as an arrow. Attack range? Non-existent, as long as she was within the solar system, there was no place she couldn't reach. As for accuracy, it was entirely up to the divine tool heavenly boat Mana to auto-aim. She only needed to pull the trigger. Then have a good trip, goddess. With her words, Ryu could only agree helplessly. Ishtar showed a wise choice, expression and directly manipulated the heavenly boat to quickly fly out of sight. Watching Ishtar fly away, Ryu sighed helplessly. Whether it was Scathach or Ishtar, they were both super strong, but unfortunately, various problems prevented him from relying on them. That goddess is somewhat different from any other goddess I've met. She seems easier to get along with, Medea suddenly said from the side. Just think of her as a Tsunare little devil. Ryu showed a wry smile. Well, I should think about how to deal with these pigeons, Ryu said, his eyes flashing coldly. During their brief conversation, the pigeons had quickly closed in. Some even boldly flew overhead. A hint of a cold smile appeared on Ryu's face. He suddenly exerted force and crashed into a nearby house on the road. Ryu had been summoned at night, and every household was enjoying dinner. This house was no exception. As a family of 5 was enjoying a sumptuous dinner, a massive figure suddenly crashed through the wall and barged in. Sorry, please continue, don't mind me, Ryu smiled slightly. However, still in Spartacus's form, his appearance created a horrifying scene for the family of 5. His smile was like that of a 300-kilogram child. They were scared stiff. Just as Ryu was about to crash through to the other side, he sniffed and then said, "The roast meat is overcooked by a minute. There's too much yogurt in the cornmeal, but the cabbage rolls are pretty good." "Thank you," in Romanian, the middle-aged woman in an apron instinctively replied. Thanks to the system, communication was naturally not a problem. See, the Romanian family understood him. Ryu thought to himself as he crashed through the other wall and rushed out. The sky above suddenly cleared. Although temporarily, it didn't matter. After all, pigeons could only be commanded to a limited extent. Especially with their white feathers, they were too conspicuous in the night. Ryu zigzagged through the alleys, choosing small paths and even crashing directly into people's homes, leaving a heap of trouble for Amikusa Shuru, the priest of the Holy Church, before disappearing into the night. In his place appeared a common European tourist in Romania. Looking at the pigeons flying around in the sky, Ryu smiled slightly and turned to walk into a tavern. Damn it. The Empress, far away in the church, suddenly slammed the table. What happened? Amikusa Shuru couldn't help but be curious. Ever since he summoned Semiramis, the Empress had always maintained her dignified and elegant demeanor. He had never seen her lose her composure like this. I was tricked by him. I can't find him anymore. Semiramis quickly regained her calm, returning to her dignified beauty with a hint of decadence. It's rare to see you lose your composure like this, Amikusa Shuru said with a look of surprise. I'll make sure that muscle-bound idiot pays for this, Semiramis said impatiently, waving her hand. How are things on your end, master? Everything is ready, Amikusa Shuru said with a confident smile. No one can stop me from achieving the salvation of humanity. With his words, intense magical fluctuations suddenly erupted in the church, not just one but 4 in total. The brilliance of the magic lit up, making the cold, dark church as bright as day. If not for the preset-bounded field, the nearby ordinary residents would have noticed the anomaly long ago. At almost the same time, in Trifas, 100 miles away, in the famous Dracula's castle, 4 figures stood before 4 summoning circles. With the recitation of the classic incantations, the magic circles brightened suddenly, and the violent magical energy flowed like a torrent. The magic circuits were circulating with several times the usual speed, being drawn into the summoning circles. The terrifying sensation of one's life being drained, combined with the pain of the magical energy flow, was almost maddening. However, the 4 figures standing before the circles stood straight despite the cold sweat dripping from their foreheads, proving their resilience as magus. Suddenly, the magical fluctuations peaked, and 4 figures with strong presences appeared in the circles. They were a middle-aged man in ancient Greek attire, a robot girl in a wedding dress with horns on her head, a young man with white hair and silver armor inscribed with cyan runes, and a pink-haired individual in a single ponytail, who was a cross-dressing man. At this moment, Darnik, the head of the Igmalenia clan, stepped forward. Behind him, on the throne, sat a middle-aged man in a black suit, dressed like a medieval noble, exuding a chilling aura. Darnik, with grand gestures and impassioned words, stirred the emotions of the black faction masters below. But to summarize, he essentially said, "You servants are cannon fodder. Quickly eliminate the enemy's cannon fodder, and then we'll fight among ourselves. In the end, it doesn't matter who wins. It's all a victory for Igmalenia, ha ha ha." After Darnik's brainwashing, the cross-dressing man protested, wanting to cause trouble. Given the shared destiny, he suggested they introduce themselves, completely disregarding the fact that revealing a servant's true name would expose their trump cards and weaknesses. No wonder Astolfo, who had lost his reason to an X level, had completely transformed into a comedic figure. Astolfo began to act cute and coquettish, actually managing to extract the true names of Frankenstein and Chiron. Frankenstein was the robot girl in the wedding dress, a creation of Dr. Victor Frankenstein from the famous science fiction novel, Frankenstein. Chiron was the middle-aged man in ancient Greek attire, originally a centaur and a renowned teacher of many heroes in Greek mythology, similar to Scathach in status. As for the cross-dressing man, Astolfo, his full name is, well, it's just Astolfo. Ahem, Astolfo's full name is Astolfo, one of the 12 paladins of Charlemagne. The final figure, the white-haired young man in heavy armor with a bare chest, was Siegfried, the hero from the German epic Nibelungenlied, known for slaying the dragon Fafnir and bathing in its blood to gain near invincibility, earning the nickname Samanai-san. Just as cross-dressing Astolfo was preparing to ask Siegfried for his real name again, his golden curly-haired, corpulent master stopped him. The fat man stated, "We are enemies from now on. Why would I reveal my trump card to you guys? You must be out of your mind." Meanwhile, the atmosphere in the church where Amikusa Shuru and his group were located was somewhat awkward, in contrast to the lively and joyful mood on the Igmalenia side due to the presence of the cross-dresser. "Hey, fake priest, what did you just say? What do you mean by saying that our masters have temporarily handed over command to you and that we should all follow your orders?" A young man with spiky golden hair, somewhat resembling a certain big dog, pointed a cross-shaped spear at Amikusa Shuru and shouted. This young man was none other than Achilles, the famous hero from the Greek myth of the Trojan War. "I feel the same way, Father Amikusa. At least let us meet our masters," a petite girl with cat ears and a bow on her back said coldly. This girl, affectionately known as Kimonomimi Waifu, was Atalanta, the princess of Arcadia in Greek mythology and a member of Jason's Argonauts. A white-haired young man in golden armor with a cloak that resembled a burning flame stood behind them, his expression extremely cold and silent, clearly indicating his position. This was Karna, the son of the sun god from Indian mythology, also known as the son of the sun god. "Ah tilde, just summoned to the present world, what a dramatic scene this is tilde," exclaimed a middle-aged man dressed as a bard with a theatrical tone. This eccentric Englishman was none other than the world-famous playwright and writer, Shakespeare. Faced with these assertive servants, Semiramis stood silently behind Amikusa Shuru, watching the scene with an amused smile as he was surrounded. Amakusa Shuru, who had built his reputation from nothing and persuaded thousands to follow him, managed to talk his way out of the situation. Feeling mentally exhausted, Amakusa Shuru walked outside the church and looked up at the moonlight. At that moment, a figure appeared behind him, holding a glass of red wine. It was the Empress. Such remarkable eloquence, you left me spellbound, Semiramis said, raising her glass in a mock toast. They are all ancient heroes and warriors. I had to use every bit of my skill to calm them down, Amakusa Shuru replied with a wry smile. Precisely because of that, they are worth subduing, aren't they, master? You're right, with such combat power, obtaining the Holy Grail is no longer an unattainable dream. My long-cherished wish will soon be fulfilled. I'm looking forward to it. Ah, Tilda, I won't let you down. One was a saint with a heart of iron, willing to stay in the world for his sorrowful wish. The other was a legendary empress with a heart like a snake, who poisoned her husband for her ambition. The two smiled at each other, understanding everything without words. Meanwhile, as both the red and black factions were summoning their servants, in a cemetery on the outskirts of Romania, a scar-faced mercenary mage named Kairi Sisegu, hired by the clock tower, began his summoning. A flash of red light and Mo-chan made her dazzling entrance. Mordred, clad in full armor and wearing a horned helmet, was one of the knights of the Round Table and the illegitimate child of King Arthur, female, and her sister. Upon her arrival, Mordred shattered the summoning catalyst into 4 pieces and declared that her purpose in participating in the Holy Grail War was to pull the sword from the stone of her father, female. Internally, Sisegu must have been thinking, you can't even distinguish between male and female, yet you want to pull the sword from the stone. Outwardly, however, he praised Mordred lavishly, making her laugh heartily and pat him on the shoulder repeatedly, saying he was perceptive and had good judgment, and that she would surely help him obtain the Holy Grail. In the town of Saisorin near Trifas, a thick fog had enveloped the ancient city at some unknown time. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Win Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO 40. A green-haired woman emerged from an alleyway, holding the hand of a white-haired little girl. At first glance, they appeared to be a normal mother and daughter, chatting and laughing together. However, once they had left, the scene in the alley was fully revealed. A male corpse, covered in blood with his heart brutally ripped out, lay there, his face frozen in extreme terror, a testament to the torture he endured before his death. Meanwhile, in a countryside school in France, a girl named Ladisha suddenly received a mysterious revelation. Thus, France's most famous heroine, Joan of Arc, appeared. Appearing in the ruler class, Jean's arrival signaled the official commencement of the Holy Grail War. The next day, Ryu woke up from his sleep. After enjoying a traditional Romanian breakfast of cornmeal with sour cheese and cream, along with some toasted bread, he stepped out of the inn and walked straight towards the outskirts of the city. Master, where are we going now? Asked Castor, in a state of dimensional concealment, softly. We're heading to the highway connecting Bucharest and Triafas, the capital of Romania, Ryu replied, a mysterious smile appearing on his face as he looked at the puzzled Castor. We're going to wait for someone. Romania, a less developed country in Europe, is known for its Gothic architecture, remnants from the Middle Ages, seen everywhere except in the capital. Trifas, the headquarters of the Igmalenia clan, is a remote small town without an airport or train station, connected to the capital only by a narrow, long highway. Ryu's destination was this highway, specifically to intercept ruler Jean, who would inevitably travel along it. Besides gaining her favor, he had his plans. Jean, traveling from France by plane, would first land in Bucharest, and then find a way to hitchhike to Trifas. Without Amakusa Shuru's revelation skill, Ryu deduced her route through analysis in the original story. Based on the timeline, Jean, as a ruler, would only appear after all 14 servants of both factions had been summoned. Traveling from rural France to Romania would take at least a day and a night, meaning she would reach Trifas no earlier than the following night. Ryu had ample time to reach his destination. Using gold and enchantment magic the previous night, he exchanged a large amount of euros, bought a second-hand Harley motorcycle in the morning, filled up the tank, and set off directly towards the highway. After traveling day and night, he finally reached the highway by noon the next day. Since the Igmalenia clan took control of Trifas, it functioned almost like a country within a country. To maintain the secrecy of their magecraft, they deliberately slowed down the town's modernization. Despite being in the 21st century, Trifas still resembled an old city from the 60s or 70s, with rare streetlights and reliance on that single highway for travel. Magas are truly selfish beings, obstacles to human progress. If they love mystery so much, they should be thrown into the primitive forest to live as savages. Lost in his thoughts, Ryu was suddenly interrupted by Castor's gentle voice. Master, are you looking for that woman? Castor asked, pointing ahead. There, a blonde girl with long braids was negotiating with an elderly pickup truck driver. Dressed in a blue suit-style school uniform, without any accessories or makeup, she naturally exuded a holy aura. Just a glance at her seemed to cleanse one's soul. From her sky-blue eyes, Ryu saw unwavering faith and pure innocence. His eyes lit up, and he twisted the throttle, sending the Harley roaring forward with a cloud of smoke. The blonde girl seemed to have reached an agreement with the pickup truck driver, who gestured with his thumb towards the truck bed, indicating she should get in. Jean was about to load her suitcase into the truck when she suddenly heard a screeching sound beside her. A powerful Harley motorcycle skidded to a stop right next to her. Sorry, I'm late, Ryu said, winking at Jean while waving at the pickup driver. Uncle, you can go now. She's my friend. I'm here to pick her up. Jean frowned slightly at this scene and was about to speak when Ryu patted her shoulder and whispered in her ear, I've come to welcome you, Saintess. Jean's pupils contracted suddenly, and she stared intently at Ryu's face, her question stifled. You wouldn't want to involve ordinary people, right? Ryu said casually, then smiled brightly at the truck driver. Thank you, uncle. The pickup driver observed the situation and, seeing Jean not objecting, nodded. Young man, you should cherish such a good girlfriend. If you're late again, you might lose her. The old driver teased them, then stepped on the gas, and the pickup truck quickly drove away. Wait, I'm not, I didn't. Jean's face flushed with anger at the driver's words, and she hurriedly tried to refute, but the driver took it as a lover's quarrel. Aw, youth. The old driver laughed heartily and drove the pickup truck away. Jean glanced at Ryu, who was standing nearby with a sunny smile, and asked, who are you? Right, I haven't introduced myself. You can call me Win Ryu, Saintess. Are you from the east? But your appearance. Jean looked puzzled. Oh, I forgot. Ryu immediately removed the magical mask from his face, revealing a somewhat youthful eastern face to her. Ah, much better. Ryu exhaled in relief. What's your purpose in stopping me? Jean frowned as she examined him. Neither she nor Ladisha's memories included this man. You should know the reason. As the ruler intervening in this 14-servant Holy Grail war, the only ones who could find you are those involved. And my other identity. Ryu smiled slightly. Before Jean's astonished eyes, the young man transformed in a flash of magical light into a burly man over 2 meters tall, weighing more than 300 kilograms, wearing numerous iron restraints. With her ruler class's revelation skill, Jean immediately recognized the identity of the burly man before her. Berserker of the Red Faction, Spartacus. But how is that possible? Even someone as battle-hardened as Jean, who faced mountains of corpses and flames without flinching, was stunned, her mouth agape. This scene completely overturned her understanding. Ryu reverted to his original form, his expression calm. Why is it impossible? Aren't you the same, Saintess? But I rely on the power of the Holy Grail. The shock Ryu brought was so great that Jean's mind froze for a moment. Ryu waved his hand dismissively. This method is not a big deal. In the future, there will be more of this technology called pseudo-servants. Ryu spoke seriously, though he was making it up. Pseudo-servants. Jean pondered, though she didn't openly acknowledge it, she had already accepted Ryu's similar state in the term pseudo-servants. So, as the only two pseudo-servants in this Holy Grail War, we are natural allies, Saintess. Ryu tried to seize the opportunity to get closer. No, as the ruler of this Holy Grail War, I must remain neutral and cannot ally with any side. Jean immediately refused righteously. Damn it, why is she so hard to persuade, while Sieg makes it so easy? It must be the original author who made Jean an easy girl. Ryu cursed inwardly. He had hoped to use their shared pseudo-servant status to draw her closer, but unlike the easily fooled Jean in front of Sieg, she didn't fall for it this time. Also, I'm just a country girl. Please do not call me Saintess. Call me ruler or Jean. Jean softened her expression, perhaps thinking her previous words were too harsh and unkind. Ryu's eyes suddenly flashed with brilliance. There was an effect. Indeed, no matter how capable and battle-hardened Jean was, she was, after all, only a 19-year-old girl before her death, and age as beautiful as a flower. If it weren't for her faith and inherently strong character, she would have collapsed long ago under the burden of saving France. Perhaps, besides the mysterious aura of the protagonist, Sieg's submissive face and tragic artificial human backstory evoked Jean's maternal instincts. Coupled with the fact that 19 is an age of innocence and liveliness, it led Jean to behave almost like a foolish girl in Fate, Apocrypha. The more Jean was like this, the more lovable she became. If Ryu's initial motivation was merely to vent his resentment towards Fate, Apocrypha, he now felt a slight pity. The 19-year-old girl before him hadn't even enjoyed the life she deserved at her age. Like a flower, she withered prematurely, dying a brutal death by burning. How could he not feel compassion? Sieg, your wife is in my care now. Ryu solemnly vowed in his heart. What's the matter? Is there something strange on my face? Jean asked curiously, seeing Ryu staring intently at her. No, nothing. I just feel fortunate to have met you. Ryu suddenly smiled. Hearing this, a faint blush appeared on Joan's cheeks. Please don't tease me. I'm just a country girl. Ryu chuckled but didn't argue. Instead, he patted the back seat of his Harley motorcycle. As an apology, how about I take you to Trifa's? Jean hesitated, seemingly still mindful of her ruler status, which made it inappropriate to get too close to a participant. It's very hard to get a ride to Trifa's. If you refuse again, you'll have to walk. By the time you get there, the Holy Grail War might already be over. That won't do. Ryu was only joking, but Jean, earnest and responsible by nature, took it seriously and sounded a bit anxious. Please take me to Trifa's immediately. Ryu nodded with amusement. I'll pack your luggage. You sit on the back seat. Without waiting for her refusal, Ryu quickly stored her luggage in a storage space. This spatial technique did not catch Jean's attention. Both Magus and servants could accomplish this. Wait. Instead, Jean was a bit troubled by Ryu's presumptuous act of taking her luggage. Hurry up and get on, Jean, Ryu said as he sat in the front seat, not giving her a chance to refuse. Jean hesitated for a moment, but her duty to the Holy Grail War overrode everything else. She sighed softly, looking slightly helpless, and sat sideways on the back seat of the Harley. Feeling a faint fragrance from behind, Ryu showed a mission-accomplished grin. The innocent and naive Jean didn't realize his malicious intent at all. By taking her luggage, there was no obstacle between them. Once the bike started, Jean would have to hold onto something to maintain her balance. Jean looked around and, finding no other option, had to reluctantly grab the hem of his clothing. One had to admit, the master who designed this Harley motorcycle was indeed a master at picking up girls. There was nothing for the backseat passenger to hold on to. To maintain balance, they either had to hold the driver's waist or grab their clothing. But trying to maintain balance by grabbing clothing only worked at slow speeds. What would Ryu do? The answer was obvious. Vroom. Ryu suddenly revved the engine and then loudly warned, we're about to set off. Hold on tight. Let's try to reach Trifa's before nightfall. As soon as Ryu finished speaking, the Harley shot forward like a warhorse whipped into action. Ah! Jean couldn't help but exclaim in surprise. In her untransformed state, her physical condition was no different from that of an ordinary girl. To conserve mana, she usually maintained this form. Ryu's sudden action caught her off guard, causing her to lose her balance and lean back. Instinctively, she wrapped her arms around Ryu's waist. Coach, she's charging with the balls. Feeling the warmth and softness behind him, and the large, soft masses being compressed and deformed, Ryu wanted to shout out loud. Ryu suppressed his excitement because they had now entered the second phase. Why did he choose a Harley motorcycle over a car? The reason was simple. Throughout history, from riding a horse together to sharing a motorcycle, after a thrilling ride, the affection between a man and a woman, especially the woman, would significantly increase. This is because, during the ride, the woman instinctively holds onto the man's waist to maintain balance. This position allows her to hear the man's heartbeat. Combined with the exhilarating environment of speeding, it creates a strong sense of security for the woman. Regardless of the type of woman, even strong, independent women have an underlying lack of security due to physiological structure. If this gap can be filled, her affection naturally increases. Of course, in modern society, there are other ways to provide a sense of security, such as money, power, and strength. But none of these apply to Jean, a mere 18 or 19-year-old girl who could lead the weak Gauls to rout the English couldn't be easily moved by ordinary means. If it weren't for Sieg's mysterious protagonist aura, combined with triggering Jean's hidden maternal instincts, he wouldn't have succeeded. Therefore, Ryu chose the ancient and romantic method of sharing a motorcycle ride. Time-tested and effective, it has proven to be a 100% success rate. Everything above is a joke, please don't take it seriously, just kidding Tilda. Ryu didn't expect that just sharing a ride would significantly increase Jean's affection, turning her into a love-struck maiden. To win over a devout saint like Jean, one would either have to break her spirit through force or subtly leave an impression on her heart over time. Honestly, the first method was tempting, but Ryu wanted a strong and kind saint, not a broken shell. Increasing the difficulty for himself, he didn't regret it. Didn't Gilgamesh say that what you can't get always seems so beautiful? Waifu Jean. Worth it. Putting aside Ryu's various fantasies, after overcoming her initial panic, Jean distanced herself from him. Ryu felt a bit regretful but didn't dare to make any sudden stops, drifts, or other maneuvers, driving steadily instead. But was Ryu really that honest? If this approach wasn't working, he'd try another angle. I wonder, Jean, what are your thoughts on this Holy Grail War? Ryu asked tentatively. I've only met you so far, but the Lord has given me a revelation that something is wrong in this Holy Grail War, Jean said, frowning slightly at her troubles. Ryu was secretly delighted. It seemed his actions had some effect. Without some level of affection and trust, Jean, as the ruler, wouldn't have shared this with him. He quickly calmed his inner excitement and casually said, I haven't interacted much with the Black Faction, but I know they've taken control of the Holy Grail and are creating a large number of artificial humans with magic circuits, using them as mana batteries for their servants. Ryu suddenly felt Jean's grip on his waist tighten. Without even needing to see her expression, it was clear that the naturally kind-hearted Jean had already developed a hint of aversion towards the Black Faction. If this were a game, it would be like the Black Faction's reputation value significantly dropping. As for the Red Faction, the master of that assassin seems to be a servant left over from the last war. His name is... Ryu's face was full of malice, Amakusa Shuru Tokisada. What, this is impossible. Jean exclaimed, instinctively tightening her grip around his waist and leaning forward, resting her face on his shoulder. She didn't realize how ambiguous this position was. From a distance, they looked like a couple whispering sweet nothings to each other. Smelling the faint fragrance at the tip of his nose, Ryu resisted the urge to turn his head and explained, he seems to have gained a physical body that can remain in the present world by touching the Greater Grail during the last Holy Grail War. Ryu glanced at Jean, who was deeply furrowing her brows, her face showing signs of contemplation. He decided to fan the flames further. I once overheard a conversation between him and Assassin. His wish seems to be to save all of humanity. After obtaining the Holy Grail, he plans to use the third magic to materialize the souls of all humans, aiming to eliminate conflict. Without looking, Ryu knew that Jean's face had become extremely grim, and the hands around his waist were trembling involuntarily. Ryu pretended not to notice her distress and continued. To achieve this goal, he had Assassin Semiramis poison and control almost all the masters of the Red Faction. I defected from the Red Faction to escape their control, Ryu concluded righteously. He wasn't worried that Jean wouldn't believe him. With her A-rank revelation skill, Jean could easily discern if someone was lying. And everything he said was true, though these top-secret details were extract from an anime. Deceiving with lies is the lowest form of trickery. The highest form of deception is telling the truth, using it to guide the other party, allowing them to make their judgments and decisions. Being deceived and still counting money for the deceiver is the mark of a true strategist. My intuition tells me you're telling the truth. If so, this is truly shocking. Moreover, the Lord's revelations keep telling me that Amakusa Shirou's actions must be stopped. Jean said, her face showing hesitation. But She looked at Ryu's profile, her hands around his waist moving subconsciously. Ryu glanced at her and immediately understood her hesitation. Although he had spoken the truth and Jean believed him, his current identity as a Red Faction berserker and participant in the war made her wary. Jean wanted to politely decline his offer to form an alliance and stop Amakusa Shirou on her own. However, Ryu's previous gestures of goodwill made her feel a bit guilty. It's okay, you don't need to worry about me. I believe that building mutual trust isn't something that happens overnight but is achieved through actions over time, Ryu said seriously. Thank you for your understanding. Jean couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. I quite admire this quality of yours. Bearing such a heavy responsibility, you indeed shouldn't easily trust others. Don't worry, I'll earn your trust through my actions. Ryu added, as expected of the saint who saved France. Unlike me, a mere rebellious failure, referring to Spartacus, I think I'm already falling for you. A direct and unexpected confession made Jean blush, her voice lowering. Saintess. I'm just a farm girl from the French countryside. Ryu first smiled slightly, then spoke in a serious tone, but you must be careful. Amakusa Shirou has been plotting for 60 years. The Black Faction is not a threat to him. Only you, as a variable, are his target for elimination. He was also once a ruler and possesses the revelation skill. He's probably already aware of your presence and might have sent assassins on the way. Thank you for the warning. I'll be careful, Jean said, nodding solemnly. As if on cue, at that moment, both of them felt an undisguised killing intent emanating from not far away. P.S. Kasoria, Jean, we don't know anything. We are just ordinary girls from the countryside. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. Zero No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolutecode. FGO, 41. Ryu immediately stopped the motorcycle. I'll drop you off here. Thank you. Jean hopped off the bike with a slight smile. The two exchanged a look, a silent understanding passing between them. With a rev of the engine, Ryu's Harley roared to life and sped off in a streak. Jean's smiling face gradually turned serious. A magical gleam enveloped her, and the school uniform she had been wearing transformed into a deep blue battle robe and silver white skirt armor. In her hand, she held a white battle flag. Clang. Jean thrust the flag into the ground and shouted at a road sign ahead, "You are the Red Faction's Lancer. What is your purpose here?" Seated atop the road sign was a white-haired servant clad in golden armor and draped in a flaming cloak. It was Karna. Oh Tilda, it seems you've noticed, ruler. Prepare yourself. The fierce warrior wasted no time, launching an attack after only a few words. He raised his bizarre, monk-like spear and delivered a blow from above that was as swift as a falling star. Boom. Smoke billowed as a massive crater appeared on the poorly maintained highway. Jean, however, had anticipated this. She deftly leapt backward, dodging the attack with ease. Son of the sun god Surya, Karna, do you understand the significance of attacking me, the ruler? Jean asked sternly, staring into the dust cloud where Karna stood. Spare me the rhetoric. My presence here is a declaration of war, Karna replied coldly, his face devoid of any expression. Despite knowing from Ryu about the Red Faction's intentions to attack her, Jean still had doubts. Is this your own decision or a command from your master? I am following my master's orders to eliminate you. Was it truly your master who gave that command? Jean nearly revealed too much in her agitation. Karna, however, caught the unusual tone in her words. Normally unshakable, Karna's eyes now held a rare glint of curiosity. Ruler, it seems you know quite a bit of hidden information. Jean opened her mouth but, mindful of Ryu who had confided in her, said nothing. It doesn't matter. My only task is to defeat you here and now, Karna said, positioning his golden spear across his chest, red magical energy swirling around it. He was preparing to use his noble phantasm. Prepare yourself, ruler. Given your special authority, I will show no mercy, Karna declared. Lancer. Beads of sweat appeared on Jean's forehead. As one of the rare and exceptional heroic spirits, Karna's combat prowess was among the strongest. The pressure he exerted on Jean was immense. Just as Karna was about to deliver his finishing blow, he abruptly halted and shifted to a defensive stance. Saber. With a loud shout, a figure in silver armor leapt from behind Karna, swinging a sword at his head. Karna raised his spear to block. A resounding clang echoed as sparks flew. The figure flipped and landed in front of Karna, launching another horizontal slash. Karna didn't even lift his foot. He thrust his spear forward, causing another explosion of sparks in the night, but he remained unmoved. However, the road sign behind him wasn't so lucky. The sword's wind pressure sliced it cleanly, leaving a mirror smooth cut. The silver-armored figure was revealed to be none other than the dragon-slaying hero, Siegfried. At that moment, a panting, rotund man in a classic white suit ran up to Jean. The fat man lavished Jean with flattery, but she remained steadfastly neutral. This man, named Gords, was somewhat deluded. Even without Ryu exposing the dirt on the Igmalenia clan, Jean's serious and fair nature, qualities that led the Holy Grail to choose her as ruler, would have made Gords' attempts futile. Gords lacked both charm and a halo of the protagonist. Winning over Jean was an impossible dream. Despite his verbose efforts, Jean refused to join Siegfried in attacking Karna. Frustrated and angry, Gords directed his ire at Karna, loudly ordering Siegfried to kill Karna. Siegfried, ever the loyal and obedient warrior, immediately raised his sword and attacked Karna. Blue and red lights clashed continuously in the night, creating numerous craters in the wasteland beside the highway. Let's leave the fierce battle for now. Ryu was speeding along on his Harley when a gloomy voice suddenly reached his ears. Master Tilda, you're quite skilled at charming girls. Ryu turned to see Medea, her face clouded with dark energy, glaring at him, clearly on the verge of another dark transformation. She was rummaging in her pocket. Ahem, Medea-chan, could you listen to my explanation first? Ryu said as gently as possible, trying not to provoke her. Medea gazed at him coldly but stopped rummaging. All right, I admit it. I want Jean to become my contracted servant, and I do have feelings for her. Ryu said, carefully watching Medea's expression. But whether it's Jean, you, Ice, or Scathach, I've never intended to use any of you. I sincerely hope we can all stay together forever. If you hate me for this, I understand. After all, I am a womanizer. Ryu smiled bitterly. The expected storm of anger and volcanic eruption didn't come. Medea unexpectedly fell silent, lowering her head in thought. After a long while, Medea slowly raised her head. I'm not angry because you're a womanizer. You will inevitably become a great hero surrounded by many partners. I was just reminded of the man I will hate when I grow up, and it filled me with resentment. But since you've promised, I'll believe you. Ryu's eyes focused. The man Medea mentioned was undoubtedly Jason, who used her to obtain the Golden Fleece, caused her family's ruin, and then discarded her when she was no longer useful. As for his womanizing, it seemed acceptable to Medea, who came from ancient Greece's mythological era, where heroes and kings often had multiple wives and lovers. Thank you gods. Just as Ryu felt relieved, Medea suddenly smiled sweetly. But I didn't expect you to be so bold, master, to even have eyes on the queen of the land of shadows. Should I tell her about this, Tilda? Medea's smile was so pure, but Ryu could almost see a grinning demon shadow behind her. It must be that mischievous Ishtar who corrupted my innocent Medea-chan. Damn it, give me back my sweet Medea-chan. Thinking of Ishtar, Ryu suddenly remembered something very important. He hurriedly said to Medea, I have something very important for you to do right now. Master, what do you need? Seeing Ryu's serious expression, Medea also put away her playful demeanor. I need you to. Ryu immediately gave his instructions. After listening, Medea nodded lightly and flew away. The dimensional phasing state is convenient. Even gravity can't affect it. Ryu watched Medea fly further and further away, feeling a bit envious. He was not so fortunate. He couldn't dematerialize like ordinary servants or fly like Medea. To maintain his energy and physical strength in optimal combat conditions, he had to ride his Harley at full speed. Ryu veered onto another path, one that led to the town where Amakusa Shuru was located. Meanwhile, Karna and Siegfried had been fighting for a long time, both holding back and not using their noble phantasms, resulting in a stalemate. Siegfried had the protection of the armor of Fafnir, while Karna had the golden armor granted by the sun god. Without using their noble phantasms, neither could inflict any effective damage on the other, and the surrounding ground became the victim, craters like the surface of the moon. As the first rays of morning sunlight broke through, neither side had gained the upper hand, and the two great heroes, now respecting each other, agreed to fight another day. Karna then switched to his spirit form and disappeared. On the other side, Jean and Gords, who had been observing the battle, approached as Karna withdrew. Jean praised Siegfried for his excellent performance. Siegfried modestly replied that it was just all right. Still not giving up, Gords tried to sweet-talk Jean into returning to the Igmalenia stronghold. Jean remained resolute and unwavering in her stance. Ultimately, they parted ways without a resolution. Meanwhile, Karna, in spirit form, was speeding back on his route. With his keen senses, Karna noticed that someone seemed to be watching him. Remaining vigilant, Karna kept his golden spear in hand, not relaxing for a moment. At that moment, a young man with an Eastern appearance appeared before him. Yo. Ryu greeted him with a raised hand, seeing that the person he was waiting for had arrived. Realizing that the other could detect him even in spirit form, Karna immediately reverted to physical form. You were the one with the ruler earlier, Karna said, scrutinizing him with a slight frown. It seems you were not just passers-by. Ryu shrugged. I've been waiting here, especially for you. Karna's expression remained indifferent. I don't seem to know you. No matter, I just want to ask you one thing. If you agree, we can get to know each other slowly. If not, there's no need for introductions. Karna remained silent. Knowing that Karna, despite his seemingly cold demeanor, had his thoughts, Ryu went straight to the point. If I rescue your master, would you be interested in joining me? Karna's eyes sharpened, and he coldly replied, my master is safe and sound. I don't need your concern, nor do I have any intention of serving another. Don't play dumb. I can't believe you haven't noticed anything suspicious. Your master has been poisoned to the point of idiocy. That venomous woman makes him say whatever she wants. Do you call that safe and sound? I never expected the renowned hero, son of the sun god Surya, to be such a master of sarcasm, Ryu said with a playful smile. Hearing this, Karna's already cold expression grew even colder. I will personally verify what you said. As for your offer, my answer remains the same. I figured, you and Siegfried are both so stubborn, Ryu sighed, showing a hint of helplessness. In that case, I'm sorry, but I'll have to ask you to leave the stage now. His helplessness transformed into a bone-chilling killing intent. As Ryu spoke, he somehow produced a card from his hand. The bronze card depicted a samurai wielding a long katana. Ryu murmured to himself. Descent card activate, Henshin. The card immediately radiated a brilliant light, outshining the morning sun. When the light faded, Ryu's clothes had transformed. He now wore a blue-purple haori over a light blue hideteir, with matching hakama, and a giant katana strapped to his back. I am now Sasaki Kojiru's. Karna, let's fight. Red Lancer, Karna, ready to receive your challenge. In an instant, the distance between them vanished as if by teleportation. The golden spear and the giant katana clashed violently, creating a piercing noise. They quickly separated, then collided again. For a moment, the battlefield was filled with sparks, and only blurred figures could be seen clashing in midair. The ground was scarred, and the sky was filled with flying sparks. This was a battlefield reminiscent of legends, a realm where mortals couldn't intervene. Facing the equally matched son of the sun god, Ryu felt immense exhilaration. Although this power was temporarily granted by the descent card for only 10 minutes, it was the genuine power of a heroic spirit. During these brief 10 minutes, he not only gained all of Sasaki Kojiru's skills except for his noble phantasm but also had Kojiru's basic attributes added to his own, allowing him to contend with Karna as an assassin. No, he was even stronger. Ryu now possessed the true essence of a heroic spirit, combined with his basic attributes, while Karna was merely a servant, a secondary embodiment. Ryu had already surpassed Karna in basic attributes to a crushing degree. In terms of speed alone, Ryu moved like a lightning bolt, nearly impossible for Karna to track with his eyes. Karna had to rely on his honed, uncrowned martial skills and his sturdy golden armor to barely maintain his defense against Ryu's torrential assaults. Realizing he couldn't match Ryu's extreme speed, Karna decisively abandoned using his golden spear to counter him. Karna suddenly stood still, planting his golden spear into the ground. Equipment is inadequate. A true hero kills with a stare. Brahmastra, Karna shouted, his eyes glowing with sunlight's brilliance. Ryu was startled, instinctively dodging to the side as a searing red beam grazed past him. A nearby mountain peak was instantly bisected by the laser-like beam. Karna immediately fired a second beam. Prepared, Ryu sidestepped again, then used the opening to appear before Karna as if by teleportation. At that moment, Karna seemed to foresee this, his gaze already fixed on Ryu's position, his eyes glowing with solar light. Facing this dire situation, Ryu, empowered by Sasaki Kojiru's vitrification, remained unfazed. With a sudden insight, he thrust his katana like lightning, aiming straight for Karna's eyes. At that moment, Ryu's katana surpassed even the speed of light. Unable to dodge, Karna tilted his head but still ended up with a long gash across his face from the katana. Despite the wound on his face, Karna seemed unfazed. With a gesture, a dozen blazing fireballs appeared above his head and rained down. Ryu, who intended to pursue, had no choice but to retreat in the face of the widespread attack. The two once again stood facing each other. Blood streamed down from Karna's forehead, forcing him to close his left eye. Well done, swordsman of the East. In this false second life of mine, meeting opponents like you and Siegfried is truly a gift from the gods. Despite being at a disadvantage, Karna wore an innocent smile, like that of a child. Perhaps this is what sets a great hero apart from ordinary people. Even bound by a contract to his master, he still yearned for a battle against an equally matched opponent. I don't wish to be your opponent, Ryu shrugged helplessly. Karna was not one to be careless or arrogant. Unlike the flashy and overconfident Gilgamesh, Karna fought with his full strength once he identified an enemy, never holding back or underestimating them. As an ally, he was the most reliable. As an opponent, he was the most troublesome. While Ryu admired Karna's character and conduct, he knew that to him, Karna was an enemy. Ryu had to give his all to kill him. And it was clear Karna felt the same way. In return, I will pierce your heart with this spear and kill you with all my might. Karna pulled the golden spear from the ground, grasping it with both hands, the spearhead aimed directly at Ryu. Scarlet, fiery mana surged from Karna, turning him into a man of flames. Suddenly, hundreds of fireballs in the phantom of his divine spear appeared behind him. With a wave of his hand, they rained down on Ryu like a storm. In the face of this overwhelming attack, Ryu, aided by his vitrification skill, remained calm and composed. He moved with extreme precision, finding the tiniest gaps in the rain of fire, and when none could be found, his katana would cleave a path. Ryu dodged and weaved, his katana either slicing or chopping, creating a way through the onslaught. However, Karna had achieved his goal. Ryu was not only held back by the attack but also forced away from Karna. Meanwhile, Karna had gathered sufficient mana once again. Karna leapt high into the air, pouring a massive amount of mana into his golden spear. The already golden divine spear now shone even brighter than the sun. Brahmastra Kandala, O Brahma, curse me. Karna aimed at Ryu and hurled the golden spear with all his might. In an instant, the sun fell. Before the golden spear even hit the ground, the earth began to boil like a volcano. This attack could not be blocked head-on. Ryu's body moved instinctively, even before he had time to think. Faster, faster, faster. In the blink of an eye, Ryu had retreated a kilometer away, moving like lightning. But the range of Karna's attack was far too vast. The golden spear fell to the ground, and immediately a sun rose from the surface. Blazing white hot flames spread outwards in a semicircle, scorching everything in their path. A large chunk of the earth was gouged out, the soil incinerated into magma, and a crimson mushroom cloud ascended into the sky. Finally, the power of the strike gradually subsided. Several kilometers away, Ryu was in a wretched state. His clothes were almost entirely burned away, with only a few parts left covering his vital areas. His exposed skin was red and covered with blisters of various sizes, clearly severely burned. Gazing at Karna, who seemed like the sun god incarnate, Ryu revealed a bitter smile. Even in the form of a heroic spirit, he still couldn't stand up to a true powerhouse head-on. This strike still wasn't enough to destroy you? It seems that this level of power is insufficient. Karna didn't seem to think so. Looking at Ryu in the distance, his expression grew even serious. Very well, as a mark of respect, I will unleash an absolutely destructive strike. As Karna spoke, his golden armor suddenly vanished, transforming into flames that enveloped his entire body. Above his head, the flames formed an eye of the sun. The golden spear turned into a black god-slaying spear within the flames. As soon as this god-slaying spear appeared, the earth seemed to sense its power. Massive amounts of magma erupted from the ground like a volcano, turning the surface into a sea of magma. The azure sky also seemed to catch fire, turning a shade of pink. Looking down from the sky, rings of scorching flames continuously expanded outwards, as if a miniature sun were slowly being born. Even before the noble phantasm was unleashed, its residual power was already terrifying. This strike could likely only be countered by a world-class noble phantasm. Even among heroic spirits of such caliber, only a few could withstand it. And Ryu was certainly not among them. Moreover, this strike had reached a level of certainty. No matter how far one ran, even if one fled to the ends of the earth, it couldn't be dodged. But strangely, facing this unavoidable, unstoppable, and fatal strike, Ryu's face showed no trace of panic. Player's Journey in Anime World. Published by Web Novel. Summary. An FGO player named Nguyen Ryu miraculously gets a rare SSR with a single draw. Overwhelmed with excitement, his phone explodes, unexpectedly causing him to travel to another world. There, he obtains a modified FGO system. Possible world. Danmachi Re. 0 No Game No Life Fate Series. Read advanced chapter at patreon.com/absolute code. FGO, 42. Karna raised the god-slaying spear high, a halo as radiant as the sun forming behind him. Even the rising morning sun paled in comparison to his brilliance, making him appear as if the sun god himself had descended to earth. Nameless warrior hidden within the eastern swordsman, I wish to know your name. Karna, holding the god-slaying spear aloft, suddenly spoke. Nguyen Ryu. Ryu loudly declared his name. A fine name, for the strongest foe of my second false life. With the utmost respect, I shall deliver my strongest strike. Under the intense heat, Karna's face seemed to blur. As Karna began to chant the incantation to release his true name, the magical